Chapter 243. Lord Song, we've waited for so long. You've finally returned, Sang Fei Hong said with a smile when she saw Song Qing-shu. It's all right. I didn't arrive a few days later than you did, Song Qing-shu said with a wry smile. Fortunately, you didn't arrive a few days later. Otherwise, I wouldn't have waited. Although I'm always out in public, it's not good for me to stay in a single man's house, Sang Fei Hong said in annoyance. Sect Master Sang, you play the world. Why would you care about what the people of the world think? Song Qing-shu teased. We sisters have been alone since we were young. Although we wander around the world and live our lives as entertainers, we are all very clean. I hope Lord Song won't joke around, Sang Fei Hong said with a serious expression. I misspoke, Song Qing-shu hastily apologized. Sect leader Sang, what do you think about the suggestion I made last time? Lord Song, are you talking about joining the sticklers? Sang Fei Hong said with a frown. But most of the sisters in the sect are weak and delicate women. I'm afraid they won't be able to help you, Lord. I don't need you to fight on the front lines. What are you worried about? Song Qing-shu said with a smile. I like the fact that the disciples of the Five Lakes sect are widely spread out. I only need you to gather information from the streets. In return, I'll provide you with protection from the officials. I'll protect you from the bullying of the officials. I'm sure you'll be able to handle the common bullies and hooligans. What do you think? All right, Sang Fei Hong nodded without hesitation. Most of the disciples of the Five Lakes sect were women. They wandered around singing for a living. They weren't afraid of the common hooligans. Their biggest headache these years was running into the officials. They often used the power of the yamen to force the Five Lakes sect to swallow their anger. This is the token on the stick. With this token, you can ignore anyone in the bureaucracy. Of course, try not to use it until the very last moment to avoid exposing your identities. Song Qing-shu tossed a token to Sang Fei Hong. You're right. You're right. Sang Fei Hong clicked his tongue as he looked at the dark steel token that exuded a cold aura. An ordinary person would not be able to replicate such an item even if they wanted to. Here are 10,000 taels of silver notes. Treat them as your initial funds. Song Qing-shu stuffed the silver notes into Sang Fei Hong's hands. Once you have sorted out the organizational structure of the Five Lakes sect and passed it to me, I will allocate more funds to you. You will not have to work so hard. This amount of money could have been reimbursed from the palace treasury, but Song Qing-shu did not want to report it to Kangxi, so he used his own money. Fortunately, during this time, there had been a lot of gifts from various places, and 10,000 taels of silver was not much for an official of his rank. Of course, this was already an astronomical figure for the common folk. This could be seen from Sang Fei Hong's excited expression. Thank you, Lord Song. Sang Fei Hong sighed. The sisters of the Five Lakes sect were not prostitutes. They only relied on singing to make a living. Hence, their income was far lower than that of the prostitutes. 10,000 taels of silver could indeed greatly improve the lives of the sisters. This money is not given to you for free. Song Qing-shu raised his hand and stopped her. She continued to express her gratitude. The Five Lakes sect must show me the potential to continue investing. Only then will I continue to secretly support you. There really is no free lunch in this world. Sang Fei Hong's heart sank. She quickly asked, May I ask what Lord Song wants us to do? Help me investigate a person. The honest youth from Hemp Creek Shop appeared in Song Qing-shu's mind. He continued, Her name is Chi Fong. She used to be the young mistress of the rather famous Wan clan in the city of Jingzhou. Now that the Wan clan has disappeared from the city of Jingzhou, their whereabouts are unknown. I hope that sect leader Sang can help me investigate. Could it be that this woman is his old lover? Suppressing the questions in her heart, Sang Fei Hong nodded and said, No problem. I will pass down the order. However, the branches of the Five Lakes sect have always been loose. I need time to reorganize the Five Lakes sect. All right. If sect leader Sang needs any help, you can let me know, Song Qing-shu said. With the other party's financial backing and the ability to mobilize military support at any time, Sang Fei Hong was confident that she could completely unify the Five Lakes sect with her own abilities. After receiving Song Qing-shu's promise, Sang Fei Hong left in a hurry. Perhaps she was worried about the Five Lakes sect, or perhaps she was unwilling to stay in the Song Manor any longer. Song Qingshu lay on the bed and rested for a while. He kept tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Recently, he had been hugging a warm and fragrant woman every day. Now that he was alone in an empty room, he felt slightly uncomfortable. Suddenly, he thought of Nan Lan in the courtyard. His heart burned with passion. He hid his tracks and snuck out. After Nan Lan helped Tian Guinong to sleep, she wiped her sweat and returned to the room next door. Although she really wanted to stay in the same room as her husband, Tian Guinong was extremely resistant to her being in the same room as him, perhaps due to psychological reasons. That enemy has returned. What should I do if I stay in the same courtyard in the future? Nan Lan lay on the bed and sighed softly. Sister-in-law, you're thinking of me. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice. Soon, a man crawled under the covers. Recognizing Song Qingshu's voice, Nan Lan suppressed her scream and quickly said, Why are you here? We haven't seen each other for a long time. I missed you. Song Qingshu answered with a smile. My husband is still next door. Nan Lan bit her lip and said, Don't worry. With my Qing Gong, he won't be able to hear you. Seeing that Nan Lan still wanted to say something, Song Qingshu smiled and said, Moreover, this is my house. I can sleep in whichever room I want. How can you be so shameless? Nan Lan lightly punched Song Qingshu's chest a few times and said hatefully, I'll have Guinong move tomorrow. Sister-in-law, if I'm not wrong, the Tian family is struggling to make ends meet in Shangjing. You escaped in such a hurry, and the prices in Yanjing City are so expensive. What do you want to move to? Song Qingshu twisted his body and had already taken off his jacket. He held Nan Lan in his arms. Nan Lan struggled a few times, but was unable to break free from his embrace. She could only sigh and say, Paper can't hide fire. We're under the same roof, and you are so daring. Guinong will eventually find out the truth. As the saying goes, there's no way to repay the kindness of saving one's life. I don't think I've done anything wrong to him. Song Qingshu's voice suddenly turned cold. If he really doesn't know what's good for him, I'll send him to Western Paradise. No, Nan Lan exclaimed, her hands tightly grabbing on his Song Qingshu's arms. Look at how scared you are. Song Qingshu held her trembling hands in his and stroked them over and over. At first, Nan Lan's body trembled, but she quickly softened. Don't worry. I know Tian Guinong's character better than you. Even if he knows about us, as long as he doesn't have the strength to deal with me, he'll continue to endure it. And if he can't see any hope of surpassing me, he might even encourage you to seduce me. I don't believe you. Nan Lan interrupted Song Qingshu before he could finish. That's because you don't know how cruel this world is. Forget it. Let's not talk about something that spoils the mood. Song Qingshu shook his head. He didn't want to explain too much to her. Tian Guinong is already inhumane, and you're unwilling to leave him. In the future, let me take over his responsibility as a husband. Nan Lan blushed and pushed away Song Qingshu's demonic hand that was about to reach under her clothes. She looked at him strangely. Did you take Guinong in because of me? What else do you think? I'm not related to him in any way. Song Qingshu pressed down on her. This time, Nan Lan didn't resist much. Actually, Song Qingshu wasn't telling the truth. He did covet Nan Lan's beauty, but it wasn't to the extent that he would lose his mind and keep a ticking time bomb by his side. He was actually interested in Tian Guinong's ability. Although Tian Guinong's martial arts were mediocre, he was definitely good at scheming. Right now, Song Qingshu urgently needed his own team. Unfortunately, with his reputation in the martial arts world, he probably wouldn't be able to find any decent people on the internet. So, he could only try to find gold among the villains in the original novel. The biggest problem with those villains was their character. In terms of ability, they didn't lose to the decent characters in the novel. However, Song Qingshu didn't plan to tell Nan Lan about this. It was actually quite good to let this little woman misunderstand that she sacrificed herself in exchange for her husband's wealth and glory. When a woman cheated, she always needed an excuse to convince herself, and he would give her this excuse. Be gentle. Guanong is still next door. The moonlight shone in through the window. Nanlon blushed as she looked at the man pressing down on her. No matter how big my movements are, as long as you don't make a sound, he won't be able to hear me, right? Song Qing-shu revealed a strange smile and twisted his waist proudly. Nanlon slapped Song Qing-shu's shoulder in annoyance. I'm worried about Qingwen. She's always been at odds with me and always wants to catch me. If she finds out, it'll be over. What's there to be afraid of? At most, a mother and daughter. Aya, Song Qing-shu suddenly screamed. Nanlon loosened her teeth and rolled her eyes at him. I told you to choose a team from the villains. You're spouting nonsense. Don't worry, I'm not a humanoid seeder. I won't go so far as to want to sleep with every woman I see. Song Qing-shu's fingers brushed across her snow-white chest and said slowly, only a woman among women like sister-in-law can make me lose control. Although Nanlon was a little shy, she was still a little happy to receive his unusual praise. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. This is what you said? Don't touch her. She's not your biological daughter. Song Qing-shu breathed into her ear. If it was Miao Ruolin, I might not be able to control myself. No, Nanlon was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale. If you wanted to not think about her, it's fine. Then why don't you turn over? Song Qing-shu hooked Nanlan's smooth chin and kissed her. I'm really scared of you. Nanlon looked at him charmingly. In the end, she supported herself with her arms and slowly turned over. Song Qing-shu held onto her plump and slender waist and praised. Good girl, so obedient. As soon as he finished speaking, his whole body pressed against hers. The next day, a refreshed Song Qing-shu went to the imperial palace to think. Soon, a palace guard ran over and said, Official Song, there's a silly boy who says he's looking for you. Silly boy? Song Qing-shu was stunned and said unhappily, just send him away. But he has the token from the stick, the guard said. Oh, Song Qing-shu's heart moved. What does he look like? Thick eyebrows, big eyes, ordinary looks, and the fingers on his right hand seemed to be missing. Before the guard finished speaking, Song Qing-shu remembered who it was and quickly ordered the guard to bring him over. Chapter 244. Looking at Di Yun's tattered clothes, Song Qing-shu smiled proudly. Brother Di, have you decided to join the Stickler Agency? Di Yun nodded and said hesitantly, but I don't have much ability. I'm afraid I can't help you. Even if it's just a piece of toilet paper. Seeing Di Yun's perplexed expression, Song Qing-shu quickly changed his words. Brother Di is highly skilled in martial arts. What's more, you have a pure heart. How can you not help me? I thought about what Brother Song said last time. I made up my mind. I must get my junior sister back. Di Yun smiled honestly. I've already ordered the Stickler Agency's spies to search for your junior sister's whereabouts. However, the world is so big and the Wan father and son have deliberately concealed their whereabouts. I'm afraid it will take some time to find out anything, Song Qing-shu said. Brother Song has already sent people to investigate. Di Yun sounded very excited. I really don't know how to repay Brother Song's great kindness. Brother Di, you don't have to be so polite. Song Qing-shu quickly helped Di Yun up. You can stay in Yinjing City in the future and familiarize yourself with the rules of the Stickler Agency. Then, I'll try to assign some tasks to you. After all, a man needs to have his own career. When you find Miss Chi in the future, wouldn't it be better if you had already earned enough achievements? Okay. Di Yun nodded, his eyes full of determination. After settling Di Yun down, Song Qing-shu strolled around Yinjing City, feeling rather conflicted. Di Yun only has a half-baked god radiating scripture. Compared to the original work, he doesn't practice the blood-saber scripture. His martial arts skills are probably limited, and he's also a little silly. I really don't know what to send him, but now that I urgently need my own team, I'll just put up with it. At least Di Yun has a pure heart, and I don't have to worry about being bitten like Tian Guinong. Unknowingly, he arrived at Wei Xiaobao's Viscount mansion. Looking at the plaque on the front door, Song Qing-shu was somewhat absent-minded. Now, in such a big Viscount mansion, there were only a few young widows left. As the saying goes, there's a lot of trouble in front of a widow's door. Fortunately, Kanshi had previously told him to come and see Shuang, situation. Finally, He had a legitimate reason. Just as he was about to knock on the door and ask for an audience, he suddenly found that the door was unlocked. Song Qingshu's heart sank. Could it be a thief? But it shouldn't be in broad daylight, right? He quickly pushed open the door and rushed into the inner hall. Hearing the noise from afar, Song Qingshu was confused. He hid in the shadows and looked carefully. Miss Shuang, Wei Juyi has already passed away. You are still young, and you still have many years to live. Could it be that you want to be a widow for the rest of your life? A middle-aged woman adorned with jewels said as she waved her handkerchief. She looked like a matchmaker. Auntie Zhang, I respect you as a neighbor, so I let you in. If you ever bring up the matter of matchmaking again, don't blame me for not remembering the kindness of the past. Men, see the guest out. Schwanger was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Don't you want to know which family's young master he is? In terms of family background, he is not inferior to Wei Juyi. In terms of appearance, I am afraid he is a lot better than Wei Juyi. Song Qingshu finally understood the situation and furrowed his brows. He frowned and frowned. Who had such big guts? Wei Xiaobao had just died, and they already had the idea to hit on Shuang. Coughing lightly, Song Qingshu appeared from the shadows. With a long laugh, he said, I really want to know which big shot's family background and appearance are better than Wei Xiongdi's. Song Dage? Seeing Song Qingshu, Schwanger was pleasantly surprised. However, it was unclear what she was thinking, but her cheeks showed a hint of bashfulness. Sister-in-law, long time no see, you have lost weight. Song Qingshu sized Schwanger up carefully. She was still wearing plain white clothes. Her beautiful hair was draped naturally behind her back, without any trace of adornment. Even though she was dressed in plain white, it was still difficult to conceal her pretty appearance. I was wondering why Miss Schwanger was so dismissive of the matchmakers who came to visit one after another. It turns out that you already have someone in mind. The matchmaker from earlier sneered. What did you say? Schwanger's servant girls, Tao Hong and Liu Lu, shouted angrily in unison. If you can do it, why are you afraid of others talking about it? The matchmaker's lips curled as she muttered something. She had obviously lowered her voice, but it was just loud enough for everyone present to hear. Big sister, have you never heard of the saying, a loose tongue causes trouble? Song Qingshu came to Schwanger's side and signaled for the two servant girls to speak up. I am so scared. Am I not allowed to speak at the foot of the emperor? The matchmaker placed her hands on her hips, showing no fear. Wondering why this matchmaker was so fearless, Song Qingshu changed his tone and asked, Who is the person that big sister mentioned just now? I am very curious. I'm not afraid to tell you. The matchmaker chuckled. Little brother, you look quite handsome. Listen to big sister and leave as soon as possible, lest you offend someone you can't afford to offend. Oh, Song Qingshu did not comment. He looked like he was waiting for her to continue. The matchmaker was rebuffed. She said in exasperation, Looking at your well-dressed appearance, you must be from a wealthy family. Do you know the 8 main surnames of the Qing dynasty? The 8 main surnames? Song Qingshu was stunned. Duo Long and the others seemed to have inadvertently mentioned it before, but he did not pay much attention to it at the time. You don't know, right? The matchmaker looked at him disdainfully. She became even calmer. If he did not even know about the 8 main surnames, even if he was an official, his position must be limited. The 8 main surnames are the 8 most prominent families of the Qing dynasty. They are the Tong, Guan, Ma, Suo, Qi, Fu, Na, and Lang families. The matchmaker's plump mouth was still opening and closing, but Song Qingshu's soul had already left his body. He began to recall the information about these 8 families in history. These 8 families could be said to be the most prominent families of the Qing dynasty. They were the nobility of the nobility. Each family had produced countless ministers and governors. The Tong family was the Tongjia family. The head of the family was a hereditary first-class duke. Nirachi's concubine Yuan, Emperor Shunji's empress, Kangshi's 2 empresses, the later Daowang's empress, and Xianfeng's imperial concubine, all came from the Tongjia family. The Tong family's prestige could be seen from this. The Guan family was the Garjia family. The first head of the family was the first hero in the founding of the Qing dynasty, Fei Yingdong, who was worthy of the imperial ancestral temple. Throughout the Qing dynasty, this family had produced countless ministers and governors. Oh boy, who had previously dominated the court and made Kangxi tremble in fear, was the current head of this family. More famous were Rong Lu, a powerful minister at the end of the Qing dynasty. Even the female celebrities Zhou Haimei and Guan Jilin belonged to the Garjia family. Back then, Song Qingshu had a very good impression of these two goddess-like female celebrities. He had specially investigated their background, so he knew about their relationship. However, when he remembered that Zhou Haimei had played the role of Zhou Zhuo, Song Qingshu's expression immediately turned ugly. The Ma family was the Majia family. Kangxi's current concubine Rong came from the Ma family. In history, Tu Hai, who pacified the rebellion of the three border defenses, was a famous figure of the Ma family. Of course, due to the disorder of time and space, the rebellion of the three border defenses had not yet broken out, so naturally, Tu Hai had not yet made a name for himself. The Suo family was the Suotoluo family. The famous ministers of the Qing dynasty, Soni and Songgo II, were outstanding figures of the Suo family. In his previous life, the fifth elder brother Yongqi in the popular novel Princess Pearl, whose birth mother was from the Suo family. The current head of the Suo family, Songgo II, had helped Kangxi deal with Oh Boy. He was deeply trusted by Kangxi, so his reputation was growing day by day. The Qijia family was relatively mysterious in history. After thinking for a long time, Song Qingshu still could not find any information about this family. The Fucha family. In history, the most famous members were Fu Heng and Fu Qinggan. Of course, in this world, Fu Qinggan had become the crown prince of Hongli, which was something that Song Qingshu had not expected. Oh, that's right, there is also a very famous figure in this family, Su Chahar Erkin, who is also known as the martial scholar Su Cher. Thinking of him, Song Qingshu could not help but think of the previous life's Stephen Chow, and a trace of nostalgia appeared on his face. That family was the Nala family. This family produced a lot of concubines. In the Manchurian Qing dynasty, the number of concubines that came from this family was probably far more than the other 7 families. The most famous one was, of course, the Empress Dowager Cixi, who was hated by the Han people of later generations. The current head of that family was Nalin Mingzhu. He and Songgota did not get along with each other, but they were both deeply favored by Kangxi, so their power could be said to be equal. He also had a son who charmed thousands of young girls of later generations, Nalin Xingda. I've been in Yanjing City for so long, I must find a chance to meet this legendary figure in the future, thought Song Qingshu. The Lang family was the Nyohao Lu family. The first head of the family was one of the 5 meritorious officials who founded the Manchurian Qing dynasty, Eridu. In history, Qianlong's birth mother was from the Nyohao Lu family. Of course, this Nyohao Lu family could very well be the Han woman Qian. The head of the Nyohao Lu family submitted to Yongzheng and had no choice but to include her in the family tree. In this distorted time and space, the current head of the Nyohao Lu family was one of the 4 great assistant ministers, Bilong. Because he had a close relationship with Oh Boy, after Oh Boy's death, he was stripped of his position as the Grand Preceptor. Now, he was idle at home, causing the Lang family's power to be the weakest among the 8 families. Which of the 8 families would Wei Xiaobao have enmity with? Song Qingshu understood. It was clear that Wei Xiaobao had offended one of the families when his power was at its peak. Now that he was dead, the other party had come to bully the orphan and the widow. Wei Xiaobao did not seem to have any children. Logically speaking, it's most likely to be the Guan family or the Lang family. After all, one of the current heads of these 2 families is dead and the other is imprisoned. It's all thanks to Wei Xiaobao. Song Qingshu raised his head and glanced at the matchmaker. Seeing that she was still chattering on about something unimportant, he immediately interrupted her impatiently. Just say it. Which young master wants to marry my sister-in-law? The matchmaker was stunned. Thinking that he had softened his tone, she hurriedly said, the young master of the Tong family, Undai. Not only is he young and handsome, Song Qing-shu did not have the patience to listen to her flattery. He lowered his head and fell into deep thought. He had seen this person in the palace before. He seemed to be the son of the first-class Duke Tongwa gang. Nurachi and Shuanji had both married women from the Tong family as their empresses. Kangshi's empress was also from the Tong family. She had recently married Empress Tong's younger sister and doted on her very much. Empress Tong and Empress Tong were both daughters of Undai's uncle, Tong Wei, so they could be considered as cousins. The Empress Dowager was also his aunt. No wonder he was so unbridled that Wu Ji was afraid of him. He actually dared to force his way to Wei Xiaobao's house. But how did Wei Xiaobao offend the Tong family that they had to settle scores with him? Naturally, Song Qing-shu did not know that Wei Xiaobao used to be the emperor's favorite. Although he was only a viscount, he had a vague air of being second only to the emperor and above tens of thousands of people. It was inevitable that he would look down on everyone. People like Zhang Kangyan and Zhao Qixin were easier to deal with. After all, they could exchange a little anger for a large sum of money and a bright future. They would not care about anything. However, for some of the royal relatives who were already of noble status, Wei Xiaobao's methods of winning people over were not in their eyes. Chapter 245. After Wei Xiaobao's death, Tong Guigang did not say anything. However, his son, Ilundai, was young and impetuous. He was not that shrewd. He could not tolerate this, so he took the initiative to send people to the Wei mansion to cause trouble for Shuang'er. Tong Guigang thought it would be good to let him test Kangshi's attitude, so he did not stop him. Song Qing-shu did not know about the grudges between the two families. Seeing the matchmaker chattering endlessly, he could not help but get angry and directly threw her out. "What's going on? Why did the matchmaker come to your house?" Song Qing-shu looked at Shuang'er in confusion. "I don't know either." Shuang'er shook her head and said in confusion, "Recently, every few days." Before she could finish speaking, a commotion suddenly came from the backyard, accompanied by a woman's shout. Very soon, a maid ran over and said anxiously, "Young mistress, some local ruffians have climbed into the backyard. They said that their cat had slipped in and wanted to search the yard. Madam, he refused and started fighting with them." Aya. Hearing this, Shuang'er quickly ran to the backyard. With her martial arts skills, how could those ordinary servant girls keep up with her? Soon, she was left behind. Song Qing-shu felt strange. From the looks of it, it was a typical case of when it rains, it pours. Seeing Shuang'er gradually disappear into the distance, he quickly chased after her. When they arrived at the backyard, they saw a group of ruffians surrounding Fong Yi. With Song Qing-shu and Shuang'er's eyesight, they could naturally see that she was struggling. Shuang'er was anxious and was about to step forward to help. Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand to stop her. "Sister-in-law, although Miss Fong's martial arts skills are not high, dealing with some ordinary ruffians is not a problem. Looking at these people's movements, they are obviously trained. I think they want to cause trouble. Since we don't know why they are here, sister-in-law, don't fall into their trap. I'll go save Miss Fong." At this moment, Fong Yi cried out in alarm. She had just been kicked in the shoulder by someone and stumbled backward. The people behind her took the opportunity to pounce on her. Song Qing-shu hurriedly leaped over and kicked away the people who tried to take advantage of the situation. He hugged Fong Yi, but before he could say anything, the person just now punched him again. Song Qing-shu's eyes narrowed as he channeled his qi into his feet and stamped on the ground. The group of ruffians suddenly felt as if the ground had turned into a turbulent sea. A strong force came over them, causing them to lose their balance and fall to the ground. They looked at Song Qing-shu in shock. "With such good martial arts skills, it would be a pity for you to become hooligans." Song Qing-shu sneered. Only now did Fong Yi realize who had saved her. Being embraced by Song Qing-shu, the masculine scent that assaulted her nose made her a little absent-minded for a moment. Only when she heard his voice did she suddenly wake up. She quickly struggled out of his embrace with a red face and returned to Shuang'er's side. "So, it's Lord Song from the sticking pole. No wonder you have such a high level of martial arts. We have eyes but failed to see. We didn't know you were here. We've offended you. We'll leave now. We'll leave now. The leader was covered in cold sweat. Song Qing-shu had now become the #1 expert in the capital. How could this group of people dare to fight him head-on? Do you know me? Song Qing-shu asked curiously. He wondered if these people were also imperial guards. Everyone in the capital knows about Lord Song's prestige. The leader laughed awkwardly and hurriedly left with his subordinates. Song Qing-shu was deep in thought and did not stop them. Fang Yi came up and said angrily, "Hey, how could you let them go like this?" "What else can I do but let them go?" Song Qing-shu replied, "At most, I'll charge them with trespassing, but they have a dignified reason of looking for the cat. At most, they'll be locked up for a few days, and then they'll be released. At that time, if you offend them badly, they'll come looking for trouble every day. I can protect you for a while, but I can't protect you forever." Fang Yi originally wanted to argue with him, but when she heard the last sentence, she couldn't help but blush and fall silent. Shuang, Er's heart also jumped when she heard this. She quickly said, "Brother Song is thoughtful. It's better to squash enmity than keep it alive." Song Qing-shu laughed in his heart. If it was so easy to get rid of those troublemakers, why would they come to me in the future? It's best if they come a few more times. Then I'll have a reason to come here and get closer to them. Back in the main hall, Shuang ordered Taoong and Liu Lu to serve tea. She looked at Song Qing-shu and asked, "I heard that Brother Song went to Shengjing recently. Did everything go smoothly?" Thinking of all the things in Shengjing, Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said it was barely smooth. Soon, the two of them fell into silence again. Seeing a trace of sadness in Shuang Er's eyes, Song Qing-shu coughed lightly. Seeing her raise her head, he said in a deep voice, "Sister-in-law, on this trip to Shengjing, I killed Fu Kangon and avenged Brother Wei." Shuang covered her mouth with her hand. She quickly got up and went to the front of Song Qing-shu's seat. She bowed gracefully. "Shuang thanks big brother." Although Shuang didn't really regard Fu Kangon as an enemy, there was still a knot in her heart. Hearing that Song Qing-shu killed him, she couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. "Sister-in-law, don't be too polite. Brother Wei is my sworn brother. I will naturally avenge him." Song Qing-shu quickly helped Shuang up. Feeling as if there was no weight in his hand, he subconsciously said, "Sister-in-law has lost weight during this time." Shuang's pretty face blushed. Without a trace, she pulled her hand back. Her mind couldn't help but recall that night when she slept in his arms. He was naturally aware of the changes in her body recently. The room fell into an ambiguous silence. The two of them were unwilling to speak. Fortunately, at this time, Fang Yi had finished changing her clothes and walked out of the inner hall. "Many thanks to Brother Song for saving me." Just now, when she changed the clothes that were kicked by the thief, Fang Yi realized that she still hadn't thanked Song Qing-shu. "Miss Fang is treating me like an outsider." Song Qing-shu held out his hand to support her. "You'd better apply some ointment. I think that person's kick just now wasn't light." "I've already applied it." When Fang Yi was applying the ointment for herself, the image of Song Qing-shu applying the ointment for her actually appeared in her mind. She was shocked by this thought, so when she saw Song Qing-shu, her expression inevitably became a little unnatural. Of course, Song Qing-shu didn't know any of this. He said with a smile, "Some time ago, I happened to meet the Poison Hand King of Medicine. I heard from him that you went to the King of Medicine's manor, but then you left before the antidote was made. Brother Song, can the Poison Hand King of Medicine really develop the antidote for the leopard embryo tendon altering pill?" Fang Yi's eyes brightened. That day, the Poison Hand King of Medicine said that he still needed some time. She thought that he was just saying it perfunctorily and left in disappointment. "With his attainments and medical skills, I believe he can do it. He is now testing the medicinal properties, so I was thinking that if I could get a real leopard embryo tendon altering pill for him to test, it will definitely help him formulate the antidote as soon as possible." Song Qing-shu replied. Fang Yi's eyes flickered. She thought in her heart, Not to mention the antidote for the leopard embryo tendon altering pill. Even the leopard embryo tendon altering pill is extremely precious in the divine dragon cult. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get it. Seeing that she was silent, Song Qing-shu turned to Schwanger and asked, Sister-in-law, just now you said that the matchmaker comes to look for you every few days. What about those hooligans just now? Question mark. They also come often. If it's not the cat, it's the dog. The people who come every time are also different. It's useless even if we report it to the authorities. Speaking of this, Fong Yi got angry. So when they came to look for her just now, she couldn't help but fight with them. It seems that they are all in cahoots. Song Qing-shu sighed and said, they play the good cop and the bad cop at the same time, just to annoy you and make you give in. Just now, I heard from the matchmaker that the person behind all of this seems to be the young master of the Tong family. Do you have any grudges with him? I don't know. I've never heard of this person before, Schwanger said in distress. Have you looked for Song Go-tu, Dolong, and the others? Song Qing-shu suddenly asked. Wei Xiaobao was their good friend when he was alive. There was no reason for them to watch Wei Xiaobao's widow be bullied. Don't mention those two people, especially that old and cunning Song Go-tu, Fong Yi said angrily. We've looked for them. On the surface, they said nice things, but in fact, they were just playing Tai Chi to deal with us. Oh, that's strange. Song Qing-shu was greatly surprised. Logically speaking, the nobles in the capital rarely used such fierce methods. Now that even Song Go-tu, Dolong, and the others were unwilling to help, there must be a deep hatred between them. There's only one way to be a thief for 1,000 days, but not to guard against a thief for 1,000 days. How about this? I'll go back and find out why the Tong family did such a despicable thing. During this period, you should hire more guards and be careful. Ever since this happened, not only can we not hire more guards, even the original people in the house have all run away, Tao Hong said hatefully. Someone must have spread the word. Song Qing-shu was stunned for a moment before he reacted. How about this? When I go back, I'll send a team of people to protect you. At least, there won't be a situation like today where the bad guys openly break in. Schwanger sighed faintly. Brother Song, I also know why Song Go-tu and the others didn't help. No matter how high Xiaobao's official position was, he's gone now. They don't need to offend another Red Duke for us. Therefore, Brother Song, you really don't need to wade into this muddy water. Right now, the Tong family is favored by His Majesty. I'm afraid it won't be good for Brother's future. Song Qing-shu laughed and stopped Schwanger from continuing. What future? If I can't even protect my brother's widow, what's the point of me being an official? Besides, I'm really not afraid of the Tong family. Looking at Song Qing-shu's departing figure, Schwanger was somewhat absent-minded. Fong Yi came to her side. Pursing her lips into a smile, she said, Schwanger, do you think Brother Song is helping us like this because of Xiaobao? Or because of you? Schwanger's heart skipped a beat. Fong Jiejia, don't talk nonsense, she said promptly. Chapter 246. Schwanger's face darkened. Sister Fong, don't make such jokes in the future. Then she turned and left. Fong Yi's expression turned ugly. She secretly spat. Bah, you've already done such a thing, and you still have to pretend to be pure. Song Qing-shu returned to the Imperial Palace from the Divine Martial Gate and headed for the stick office. The stick office was temporarily located near the Imperial Pavilion in the northeast corner of the Imperial Garden. Song Qing-shu walked into the stick office. A subordinate had already come to report some news to him. He immediately frowned and gathered everyone in the stick office. He asked Di-yun, Brother Di, I heard you fought with some people? Brother Song. Di-yun's face turned red. They laughed at my broken palm. Well done. Not only did Song Qing-shu not blame them at all, he even praised them. Useless people deserve to be beaten. Then he glanced around, and most people lowered their heads in shame. The main members of the stick office were the hostages sent by various sects in Jianghu. These people were usually arrogant, although they did not dare to offend the palace guards. When they saw Di-yun, who also came from Jianghu, they did not have any misgivings. In addition, Di-yun looked honest and easy to bully. This group of people wanted to find trouble, with Di Yin out of boredom. Although Di Yin did not have many fortuitous encounters in the original work, his divine reflection Jinchi was not a joke. This group of people only came from some unranked sects in Jianghu. Naturally, they were beaten badly. No one dared to look down on Di Yin anymore. Song Qing-shu had intended to train Di Yin. Seeing this, he was overjoyed. He had been worried that Di Yin did not have any prestige. This turned out to be a lucky hit. He thought for a moment and then said, "Brother D, pick 10 good people from the stick office. In the next period of time, you will guard a residence." Di Yin hesitated for a moment, and from among the crowd, he picked a few martial art practitioners with the best martial arts skill. Song Qing-shu nodded in satisfaction and dismissed the crowd, leaving them behind. After giving them some instructions, he let them go to Shuang Er's mansion. Kanshi had asked him to set up the stick office. He had not had time. However, after thinking for a long time, he gradually had a rough idea of the stick office. According to Kangxi, the stick office needed to be able to monitor the officials. It also needed to be well informed about the news at home and abroad. It also needed to have a certain amount of martial power. Therefore, Song Qing-shu planned to divide the entire Stickler division into divisions, just like a certain organization in his previous life. The first division would be responsible for monitoring the officials. The second division would be responsible for collecting domestic information. The third division would be responsible for foreign intelligence. And the fourth division would be responsible for intimidating the enemy with military force. According to Song Qing-shu's plan, there were many things waiting to be done, so he could only temporarily hand over the intelligence department to Sang Feihong. As the strength of the intelligence department grew, the intelligence department would definitely have to be split into two, namely the second division and the third division. Moreover, the third division involved different countries, so they could set up different subordinate organizations. As Di Yin, Song Qing-shu wanted to train, and Di Yin was Shan. D D D D D D D D D Yin E D D D D D D D D B Song and Fei was, but she B Yin. However, Song Qing-shu did not want to be an honest spy under Kangxi. He was the head of the spy. The fourth department was used to deal with Kangxi. He called it the Bright Fourth Department. He secretly planned to set up the secret fourth department behind Kangxi's back. The fifth department was responsible for the development of poisons and hidden weapons. Cheng Ling Su, the poison hand king of medicine, and others were naturally the first choice. The sixth department was responsible for assassinations. Tian Guanong had been castrated. When he mastered the Bishies sword play and killed people with his ghostly body movements, Song Qing-shu felt excited. Of course, if Dongfang Muxue was willing to join him, she would be the best choice. Unfortunately, he could only think about it. The seventh department was responsible for interrogating and controlling subordinates. Heavenly Mountain Tong Lao, who knew the life and death talisman, or Su Quan, who had the leopard tendon-changing pill, were excellent. The eighth department belonged to the strategy department. Song Qing-shu wanted to rule the world. Naturally, he had to conquer the world. Unfortunately, there was no such talent. Be it the Bright Fourth Department or the Secret Fourth Department, they were in urgent need of talents. Song Qing-shu wanted to expand the Secret Fourth Department and build his own team in secret. Lord Song. Soon, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Song Qing-shu looked up. It was Zhang Kangyan and Zhao Qixin. "Oh, it's you." Song Qing-shu let out a long sigh and relaxed. "As soon as we came back from Xinjing, we came to report to the Secret Fourth Department." Zhang Kangyan smiled obsequiously and said, "Just now, I saw you send that Di Yun to protect a certain household. It's not that I want to be nosy, but although that Di Yun's martial arts are not bad, he looks silly. In a place like the capital, it's impossible to solve problems with martial arts. Why not send us brothers?" Song Qing-shu saw through their plan. He couldn't help but tease them. "Do you think this is a good job? Do you know which family they are going to protect?" Zhang Kangyan and Zhao Qixin looked at each other and shook their heads. "Please tell us, Lord Song." "Wei Xiaobao's Viscount Mansion," Song Qing-shu said faintly. Zhang Kangyan and Zhao Qixin were shocked. They hurriedly smiled and said, "It really isn't a good job. Lord Song is considerate of us. It seems that you know what happened to Brother Wei's family. Song Qingshu sneered. He was just worried that these two old foxes in the officialdom wouldn't protect Shuang-er and the others wholeheartedly because of the power of the Tong family. That was why he sent Qing Diyun and a few disciples from Jianghu to protect Shuang-er. They didn't have any relationship with the nobles in the capital, so they naturally didn't have any scruples. We really don't know. Zhang Kongyin and Zhao Qixin looked very unnatural. Wei Xiaobao treated you like that before. Now that he's dead, you immediately fell out with him. How would I dare to use you? Song Qingshu snorted coldly. Zhang Kongyin and Zhao Qixin looked ashamed and said helplessly, Lord Song, although we know that the Tong family wants to deal with Miss Shuang-er, we don't know the cause. We really wanted to help before, but the Tong family is now favored by the emperor. We also have the elderly and children in our family, so we really don't dare to offend the Tong family. Seeing that Song Qingshu didn't say anything, Zhang Kongyin hurriedly said, We don't know the reason, but there is one person who definitely knows. Lord Song, you can ask him. Who? Song Qingshu asked curiously. Chief Steward Dolong. Zhang Kongyin and Zhao Qixin answered in unison. Song Qingshu passed through the imperial garden and hurried in the direction of the gate of heavenly purity. He was still guessing whether Wei Xiaobao had offended the Tong family, or whether it was simply Yi Lundai who had designs on him. Suddenly, he heard the reprimanding voice of a palace maid. Insolent servant, you actually dare to offend Lady Consort Tong. Hearing the way a servant addressed him, a harsh light flashed in Song Qingshu's eyes. He raised his head and saw a few palace maids surrounding a beautiful woman in palace attire. The beautiful woman was no older than 28 years old. She was dainty and had a natural air of nobility. Before Song Qingshu could speak, the beautiful woman in palace attire asked curiously, Who are you? How come I've never seen you in the imperial palace? The imperial garden was located in the inner palace. Normally, the people who came and went were the imperial guards. Although the imperial consorts didn't necessarily recognize all of them, they were at least familiar faces. As a result, Song Qingshu didn't find it strange that the other party would be curious about him. Deputy Chief Steward of the Imperial Guards, Song Qingshu, greets Lady Consort Tong. I've always been working for His Majesty outside, so it's not strange that Lady Consort Tong doesn't recognize me. Song Qingshu understood that the person in front of him was most likely Kangxi's new imperial consort, Tong Jiashi, who the people in the palace privately called Empress Tong. So you're Lord Song, who saved His Majesty. Empress Tong's beautiful eyes shone. Song Qingshu's reputation in Jianghu was most famous for the Battle of Mount Tai. However, the imperial consorts and palace maids in the Forbidden City clearly had a deeper impression of him defeating the masters of the Red Flower Society and saving His Majesty that day. Sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. You are indeed a talented person. In the future, Lord Song will, seeing that she was young but imitated the other imperial consorts to act like an elder, wanting to show the master's concern for his subordinate, but the effect was not good. Song Qingshu held back a smile. What other orders does Lady Consort Tong have? I'm going to find Chief Steward Duo now. I wonder? As soon as Empress Tong spoke, she also felt that something was wrong. Looking at the trembling shoulders of the palace maids beside her and the smile on Song Qingshu's face, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. It's all right. Lord Song, go ahead. Looking at Song Qingshu's disappearing figure, the palace maid beside her said indignantly, This Song Qingshu is really bold. In front of Her Majesty, he doesn't call himself a servant, but calls himself me. He really has no manners. Empress Tong smiled slightly and said indifferently, Capable people are always a little arrogant. What's more, His Majesty is recruiting talents from all over the world. How can he chill the hearts of the heroes of the world because of this kind of superfluous formalities? Don't mention this again. As soon as she finished speaking, she thought to herself, if only His Majesty was as handsome as him. But she soon realized that she could not have such a rebellious thought. Empress Tong's face suddenly turned pale. What's wrong with Her Majesty? The palace maid beside her asked with concern. Nothing. I'm a little uncomfortable. Let's go back to the palace. Empress Tong's pretty face turned pale, and she said weakly, Duo Darren, what enmity does the Tong family have with Wei Xiongdi that they would act against his widow after his death? After finding Duo Long and exchanging a few words of greeting, Song Qingshu asked directly. Duo Long vigilantly looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he lowered his voice and said, Right now, no one in Yanjing City dares to talk about this matter for fear of bringing disaster upon themselves. I only secretly revealed it to you because of my friendship with Wei Xiongdi in the past. Subsequently, Duo Long tirelessly narrated the matter of Tong Gugagwang. So, it's like that, Song Qingshu suddenly realized. But to make such a big fuss over such a small matter, isn't it too excessive? Duo Long laughed dryly. In the eyes of us outsiders, it's naturally a small matter, but in the eyes of a large family like the Tong family, it's a major matter of face. When Wei Xiongdi was alive, they naturally did not dare to act out. Now that Wei Xiongdi is dead, they have no more misgivings and will naturally come knocking. Chapter 247. Who asked the Tong family to be so powerful? Doran shook his head. The current Empress Dowager is a member of the Tong family. The current Empress is also a member of the Tong family. Recently, the Emperor took Empress Tong's sister as a Gui Fei and doted on her. The Tong family naturally rose in status. His Majesty and Wei Xiongdi are very concerned about each other. It's impossible for him to watch Shuang or get bullied like this. I plan to secretly tell him what happened recently, said Song Qingshu after a moment of silence. Doran hesitated and finally urged, Brother Song, there's something I don't know if I should say. Brother Duo, please speak. Song Qingshu called him brother, but in his heart, he cursed. In the officialdom of the Manchurian Qing, there were a lot of people who called each other brother in front of their faces, but stabbed them in the back. He shouldn't be fooled by Doran's honest and straightforward appearance. If he was a straightforward person, how could he have been the chief of the imperial bodyguards for so many years? People die like a lamp going out. Doran's expression wasn't good, but he still gritted his teeth and said, In my heart, I also think of Brother Wei as one of us, but he's already dead. The river flows 30 years east, 30 years west. For him, it's not wise to offend the powerful Tong family in front of His Majesty. Seeing Song Qingshu frown, Doran continued, I know that Brother Song must look down on me and feel that I'm not loyal and let Brother Wei down. But Brother Song, do you know that I have no choice? No choice. Song Qingshu looked at him in confusion. Doran sighed. When the Tong family made things difficult for Shuang, even though I was worried about the Tong family's power, I still wanted to tell His Majesty and have him come forward to stop the Tong family. Who knew that before I could say anything, His Majesty told me to visit Shuang, when I have time. Oh, Song Qingshu's heart moved, and he quickly asked calmly, Isn't that normal? His Majesty also told me to find time to visit her. Doran glanced at him and forced a smile. Brother Song, you haven't been in the officialdom for a long time, so you don't know the knack of it. In our circle, the biggest taboo is a life and death struggle. Putting everything out in the open, a person will never say what they are thinking, but will use all kinds of tactful methods. His Majesty told us to visit Shuang, when we have time. Do you really think he wants us to visit Shuang, What else? Song Qingshu frowned, clearly confused. The present emperor is wise beyond compare. There is nothing that he doesn't know of that has happened in Jing. Doran shook his head. The Tong family so brazenly attacked Wei Xiongdi's widow. Do you think that the emperor doesn't know? Song Qingshu felt a chill in his heart. You mean? I didn't say anything. Doran shook his finger and smiled awkwardly. In any case, before I said anything, His Majesty told me to go see Shuang. I understood that His Majesty's attitude was not to help either side. Not helping either side? Song Qingshu felt that when the people leave, the tea cools. He didn't have enough brain power. Doran explained, since His Majesty knows of the Tong family's recent actions, with his relationship with Wei Xiongdi, If he really wanted to intervene, he would have warned Tong, old master, long ago. But His Majesty didn't say anything. Instead, he told us, a group of people who have a good relationship with Wei Xiongdi, to go see Shuang. It was clear that because of Empress Tong, he didn't want to meddle in this matter. But His Majesty is nostalgic and worried that Shuang would be bullied too much, so he told us old people to take care of her. Is that so? Song Qingshu's horizons were broadened. He hadn't thought that Doran could interpret so many meanings from such a simple sentence. Song Xiongdi, I really wouldn't say so much to normal people. Since Yangzhou, you and I have gone through thick and thin together. That's why I said so much to you. Doran sighed. It's not that we are innately cold, but we understand His Majesty's attitude. We are a bit disappointed. That's why we don't dare to stick our heads out. Suadaran and I both have families. If we offend Tong family, I am afraid the consequences will be hard to predict. If Song Xiongdi is willing to help, we will definitely lend you a helping hand in secret. So that's how it is. Song Qingshu muttered to himself irresolutely for half a day. Let me think about it first. Doran sneered in his heart. It seems you are not much different from us. However, as soon as the words came out of his mouth, it was the complete opposite. Song Xiongdi, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Returning to the mansion, Song Qingshu was still thinking about how to solve this matter. The most straightforward way was, of course, to uproot Tong family, and then all troubles would be over. Unfortunately, Tong family was deeply rooted in the imperial court. The title Tong half-court had already begun to circulate, meaning that half of the officials in the imperial court came from Tong family. No wonder Doran and Songota were unwilling to offend Tong family. Therefore, eradicating Tong family was not realistic. At least, with Song Qingshu's current strength, it was still impossible. In that case, the only way left was to reconcile with Tong family. However, listening to what Doran said today, Wei Xiaobao had tarnished Tong family's old master's and Tong family's current master's reputation. Reconciling was easier said than done. Wei Xiaobao, oh Wei Xiaobao, it's actually easy for you to die, leaving behind a pile of trivial matters. Song Qingshu said with a bitter smile. Suddenly, he remembered Empress Tong, whom he ran into in the Imperial Garden today. His heart was moved. Looking at Empress Tong's appearance, she seems to be kind-hearted, not as hard to deal with as her older sister. Can I start with her? Song Qingshu was still deep in thought when suddenly a servant came to report that someone from the Wei mansion was requesting an audience. He could not help but be taken aback. It was already this late. Who would come to the Wei mansion to see him? When he saw Feng Yi's pale complexion, with a saber wound on her shoulder, he could not help but be shocked. Hastily he walked over and lifted her arm. With deep concern he asked, Miss Feng, how did you suffer such a heavy injury? Feng Yi was very satisfied with how Song Qingshu addressed her. In fact, in her heart, she had always hated Tao Hong and Liu Lu for always calling her second madam. At that time, on one hand, it was because her sweetheart Liu Yizhou was too worthless. On the other hand, she had no choice but to acquiesce to Wei Xiaobao's identity as the first wife. But in the depths of her heart, she had always looked down on Wei Xiaobao, this little hoodlum. Even his legal wife was not willing, let alone some second madam. Hearing that Song Qingshu kept calling her Miss Feng, she felt extremely pleased in her heart. Even her expression softened a little as she gently replied, Song Dage, after you left today, Tao Hong and Liu Lu, the two girls, went out to the streets to buy things. Who would have thought that they didn't come back? We searched everywhere and found out that they were kidnapped by a group of masked men. Shuang and I thought about it, and both felt that it was the Tong family's doing. For the time being, they couldn't do anything to Shuang so they turned their attention to the people around us. Shuang felt that Tao Hong and Liu Lu had been implicated because of her, so she decided to sneak into the Tong residence at night and rescue the two girls. I couldn't persuade her and could only accompany her. I didn't expect that the Tong family had so many experts. Very quickly, we were exposed. In order to rescue me, Shuang fell into a tight encirclement. Right now, I am afraid, Before Fong Yi could finish, she looked like she was about to burst into tears. Song Qingshu helped her apply the medicine on her wounds while speaking with a slightly reproachful tone. Tong family's power and influence, with your martial arts skill, wanted to rescue the two girls from the Tong residence. It is really... Song Qingshu did not finish, but his meaning was obvious. Feeling the warmth of his fingertips, Fong Yi was somewhat embarrassed. She pulled her arm back and said awkwardly, "At first, I also said the same thing. I wanted Shuang to discuss it with you." Who would have thought that as soon as she heard what I said, without even thinking, she directly refused? Song Dage, have you offended her in some way? While speaking, Fong Yi carefully sized him up. Song Qingshu was taken aback. He wondered if Shuang was somewhat guarded against him because of the previous incidents. However, he did not intend to tell Fong Yi about these reasons. He had no choice but to say, "Sister-in-law is soft on the outside but hard on the inside. I can understand that she is unwilling to trouble her former friends." "Oh, that's right. Miss Fong, when did you leave the Tong mansion?" Fong Yi's attention was diverted by him. She promptly replied, "About an hour ago. After I left the Tong mansion, I hid outside for a while, but I didn't see Shuang come out." Listening to the voice of the servants inside, it seemed like she had already been captured. At this moment, Fong Yi's thoughts were extremely complicated. On one hand, she actually did not like Shuang. The reason was that after she and young Junju Mu Giant Pain were captured by the Divine Dragon Island, the other party had asked Wei Xiaobao for the 42-chapter sutra. In the end, Wei Xiaobao had made a joke, saying that he did not have that thing. In stark contrast, not long after that, Fat Tuchuo had captured Shuang at the Qingliang Temple, but Wei Xiaobao did not have the slightest hesitation and took out the 42-chapter sutra in exchange. From that moment on, there was a thorn in Fong Yi's heart. Originally, she had already planned to devote herself to Wei Xiaobao, but after this incident, she understood that in Wei Xiaobao's heart, Shuang was the most important. Therefore, Fong Yi very quickly strangled that muddled feeling in her heart into nothingness. However, today, Shuang, whose martial arts skill was higher than hers, clearly had the opportunity to escape, but in order to save her, she was captured by the Tong mansion instead. Fong Yi, who had escaped with her life, felt extremely upset in her heart. Hearing what Fong Yi said, Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, "Miss Fong, you go back to the Wei mansion first and recuperate your injury. I'm going to the Tong mansion to take a stroll." Save Shuang finished speaking. Without waiting for her reply, he hastily ran out. Fong Yi stared blankly. Her countenance was somewhat unsightly. Shuang, why did these men care about her so much? In this generation, the Tong family was divided into two. One was the eldest son, Tong Weigang, who inherited the Tong family's first-rank dukedom. The other was the second son, Tong Wei, who was the father of the current Empress Tong. Although he was unable to inherit his father's title, because of his daughter, his father relied on his daughter's status, so he was conferred the title of first-rank duke by Kangxi. Yilundai was Tong Weigang's first son. On one hand, he relied on the fact that he was the Tong family's legal successor. On the other hand, he relied on the fact that his aunt was the Empress Dowager and his cousin was the Empress. Therefore, his conduct was unbridled, even in Wuji. The Tong mansion that Shuang, and Fong Yi were investigating was naturally Tong Weigang's mansion. Song Qingshu had been in Yinjing for quite some time. Naturally, he knew where his family's residence was. Hiding in the shadow of a secluded courtyard wall in the Tong mansion, Song Qingshu took out a black cloth and covered his face. It was not that he was afraid of the Tong family, but in the officialdom, as long as it did not openly shed all pretense of cordiality, everyone would leave some leeway. Even if the Tong family knew in their hearts that Shuang was rescued by him because of his current status, plus the fact that he had covered his face to give the other party a way out, even if they were gnashing their teeth in hatred, they would still greet him with a smiling face in front of him. Quietly entering the Tong mansion, he was not discovered by anyone. With Song Qingshu's current Qinggong, As long as it was not the imperial palace's inner courtyard or Hong Li's perverts who turned their home into a military base, he could come and go as he pleased in most places. Chapter 248. These two servant girls are so juicy. A vulgar voice sounded, accompanied by the whimpers of a woman. Just enjoy your hands, don't go too far. They were captured by young master, advised the other person. Haha, young master has taken a fancy to the Madam of Wei Fu. Although her two servant girls are not bad-looking, there are many servant girls of this level in the Tong Fu. They are not enough to enter young master's eyes. Young master has captured them to lure the Madam of Wei Fu to rescue them. Now that she has been captured, these two servant girls are naturally useless. In the end, aren't we the ones benefiting? The vulgar voice continued. Young master is really clever. He knows that the Madam of Wei Fu used to be a heroine of the Jianghu. Relying on her martial arts, she would definitely sneak into the Tong Fu to rescue her. But how could she know that the Tong Fu had already laid an ambush for her, waiting for her to walk right into the trap? Through the window, Song Qingshu saw Tao Hong and Liu Lu curled up in the corner. Her hands were tied and her mouth was sealed. As she watched the two men gradually approach, her eyes were filled with terror. Knowing that there would not be any valuable information if he continued to listen, Song Qingshu pushed open the window and leapt in. The two guards had just reacted when their acupoints were immediately sealed. The young Madam of Wei Fu that you said was captured. Where is she now? Song Qingshu looked at the two and asked in a low voice. The two guards were quite unyielding and did not have any intention of speaking. Song Qingshu had already expected this situation and casually sealed the sleeping acupoint of one of them, leaving only the man with the vulgar voice. What did you do to him? The other's voice was filled with panic. I just made him faint. Song Qingshu smiled and continued. This way, he won't be able to hear our conversation. Tell me where Madame Wei is now, and I'll let you go. Seeing the disapproving expression on the other's face, Song Qingshu sneered. It doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I'll kill you and ask him. He'll tell me eventually. If he doesn't say anything, you won't have any clues. The guard was terrified. He wasn't born tough, but he understood that if he leaked the secret today, with the power of the Tong family, his fate might not be any better than death. When an old friend dies in front of him, I think the possibility of him working with me will be higher. After that, Song Qingshu grabbed the man's neck and tightened his grip. Let go of me. I'll talk. The intense pain coming from his neck caused the guard to tremble. He quickly begged for mercy. Just say it like this. I'll let go when you're done. The reason why Song Qingshu interrogated him first was largely because he could tell that he was a pervert. Perverts usually valued their own lives more. After a round of intimidation, the other party really gave in. However, Song Qingshu had no intention of letting go. He knew that this kind of person was the most cunning by nature. If he had a chance to breathe, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't have bad intentions. Only words spoken in a life-and-death situation were the most trustworthy. She was brought to young master's room. The guard felt that he was about to suffocate. He coughed nonstop and didn't dare to be slow. He quickly said, Where is your young master's room? Song Qingshu was worried about Shuang, and tightened his grip. East, northeast side, each Shui garden. The guard's face was flushed red. The veins on his neck were bulging, and his tongue was stuck out for a long time. Each Shui garden? Song Qingshu remembered this name in his heart and knocked the guard out with a palm strike. After removing Tao Hong and Liu Lu's restraints, Song Qingshu wanted to help them up. Who knew that the two servant girls were frightened by his performance just now and subconsciously shrank back. It's me. Song Qingshu pulled off his mask and looked at the two girls. Lord Song, it's you? When the two servant girls saw a familiar person, they couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Time is pressing now, so let's not chat. I'll get you out first and then go find your madam, Song Qingshu quickly said. Lord Song, you go save our madam first. She's in more danger, the two servant girls said in unison. It's too dangerous for you to stay here. If someone comes, you won't even be able to run. Don't argue. I'll send you out first. Song Qing-shu shook his head. Without waiting for the two to argue, he held the two servant girls in each hand and flew out of the Tong residence. Song Qing-shu was in a hurry to save Shuang, so he used shadowless treading through sand. The two servant girls only heard a whistling sound in their ears. When they reacted, they were already on the street outside the Tong residence. You go back to the Viscount residence first. I'll go save your madam now. As soon as Song Qing-shu finished speaking, he disappeared and flew towards the Tong residence. The two servant girls fell into silence at the same time. In their opinion, a servant should have the awareness of sacrificing themselves to save their master. Therefore, in the Tong residence, the two of them had asked Song Qing-shu to save their madam in unison. How could they know that Song Qing-shu came from the modern era and had the concept of equality in his mind? He wasn't willing to abandon the two servant girls like that. Compared to other people, Lord Song is a little different. Talong sighed. Yes, Lilu's eyes were also somewhat absent-minded. I hope Lord Song can safely rescue Madam. Now that Song Qing-shu used shadowless treading through sand, it could be said that he could use it at will. He streaked across the sky above the Tong residence like a noiselessly gliding owl. Along the way, he encountered many servants and guards, but no one noticed the intruder above their heads. In the air, the entire layout of the Tong residence could be seen clearly. Song Qing-shu quickly found each way garden in the northeast corner. Noticing the guards at the door looking around vigilantly, Song Qing-shu frowned. He didn't want to beat the grass and startle the snake, so he quietly snuck in from the roof. Following the sounds coming from the room beneath his feet, Song Qing-shu finally found Elundai's bedroom. Lifting a tile on the roof, Song Qing-shu leaned over to look. Little girl, you're quite patient. You've been poisoned by me for so long, yet you can still maintain a clear mind. Hearing Elundai's voice, Song Qing-shu was startled. Shuang was poisoned? I have no enmity with your Tong family, so why do you keep targeting me time and time again? A trembling female voice traveled over. Song Qing-shu shifted his gaze and saw a beautiful young girl sitting by the bed. Her face was flushed, and a dense layer of fine sweat seeped out of her forehead. Her hands were tightly gripping the pillar at the head of the bed. Because she was using too much strength, her fingers appeared excessively white. Who else could it be but Shuang? No enmity? Elundai sneered. Of course, Miss Shuang doesn't have any enmity with our Tong family, but that dead husband of yours is different. Xiaobao. Shuang, who was momentarily absent-minded. Puzzled, she asked, how did he offend the Tong family? Back then, that scoundrel Wei Xiaobao had just helped His Majesty eliminate Oh Boy. He could be said to be extremely popular. He looked down on our Tong family and actually used my grandfather and father's names as a joke. Elundai quickly recounted the grudges of the past. My grandfather and father were magnanimous and didn't bother with that kind of nouveau riche. However, I was young and impetuous and didn't have such good self-restraint. Unfortunately, Wei Xiaobao was already dead. I couldn't take revenge even if I wanted to, so I could only set my sights on his wives. Shuang finally understood the cause and effect and calmly said, Xiaobao indeed doesn't pay attention to what he says sometimes, but he certainly didn't mean it. I apologize on his behalf for offending the Tong family. If apologies are useful, why are there still so many lawsuits in this world? Elundai waved his hand disdainfully. It's too late. Since Wei Xiaobao can't pay for what he did, let his wives pay for it. It's clear that when Xiaobao was alive, your Tong family didn't dare to seek revenge, but now you're talking big here. It's simply ridiculous. Shuang quickly interrupted him and said coldly, whatever Madam says. Elundai didn't mind. Instead, he looked at Shuang and said, Madam, do you feel that your whole body is weak and hot right now? Isn't that place gushing out like a flood that has broken through a dam? As he spoke, he looked obscenely at a certain place between Shuang-er's legs. Shameless, Shuang angrily rebuked. Unfortunately, because of the effect of the drug, her voice sounded like a coquettish pout. What kind of drug did you give me? This drug has a very pleasant name. It's called I Love a Stick of Firewood. Apart from the world's #1 drug, extraordinary lewd acacia powder, I Love a Stick of Firewood can really dominate the forest of lust. Don't mention touching this thing. Even smelling it is unbearable. Moreover, Madam has just eaten so much. Elundi burst out laughing. Do you know where I got this drug? Schwanger blushed and spat. How I know about this kind of vulgar thing? It was given to me by your good husband. Elundi smiled very proudly. What? Schwanger's heart turned cold. She immediately shook her head and said, Impossible. You're lying to me. Madam was right about one thing just now. When Wei Xiaobao was alive, he was the most favored person by the emperor's side. Not to mention the Suo family. The current patriarch of the Nalin family, Songgo II, and Nalin Mingzhu, even Prince Kong Jieshu was respectful to him. At that time, I really didn't dare to act rashly. I could only deliberately make friends with him and see if I could find any flaws in him. Elundi recalled the various things of the past, his expression somewhat unsightly. This drug was given to me by him when we went to a brothel one day. He also told me that the best drug in this field was none other than Yangzhou's lovely spring courtyard's mystifying spring wine. The effect of I Love a Stick of Firewood was too overbearing and really not suitable for frequent use. Hearing him mention lovely spring courtyard, Schwanger knew that it was probably really given to him by Xiaobao. She couldn't help but feel her hands and feet turn cold. Thinking about it, it's really ironic. Elundi stood up and approached Schwang, who was at the bedside step by step. I used all the drugs that Wei Xiaobao gave me on his own wife. If he knew this in the underworld, he definitely wouldn't die in peace. Happy. Chapter 249. Don't come over. Schwanger's voice was full of panic. She had planned to take the opportunity to seal the major acupuncture points on Elundi's body, but the drug was too strong. She felt her whole body turn hot and weak, unable to muster any strength. Scream. The louder you scream, the more excited I will be, and the more intense the pleasure of revenge in my heart. You're in the Tong Manor right now, and I specifically ordered everyone in the courtyard to go outside. No one will come to save you at this time. Elundi laughed dryly and rubbed his hands together, reaching out to touch Schwanger's already crimson face. Unexpectedly, there was a bang, and as the tiles fell, a masked man fell from the sky. Elundi was stunned, but the other had already sealed his acupuncture points. Seeing someone come to her rescue, Schwanger's tense nerves relaxed, and she fell uncontrollably onto the bed. Song Qingshu promptly reached out and pulled the limp Schwanger into his arms. Who are you to dare meddle in my Tong family's business? Elundi was both shocked and angry. Tong Gongzi bullying a widow with this kind of despicable method is a bit of a disgrace to the Tong family. Seeing Schwanger's appearance in his arms, Song Qingshu couldn't help but become a bit angry. Who are you? Don't touch me. The male scent coming from the tip of her nose caused the drug Schwanger's heart to race like a monkey. She felt that it smelled exceptionally good, and she couldn't help but be startled. A trace of clarity suddenly appeared in her blurred eyes, and she pushed Song Qingshu away with all her might. Full of caution, she shrank to the corner of the bed. The guards outside had already heard the commotion and hurried over. Song Qingshu had no choice but to pull up his mask and quietly say, Sister-in-law, it's me. Schwanger's expression couldn't help but freeze, and then she finally showed a trace of relief. Sister-in-law, I'm going to carry you away. Please forgive me. Without waiting for Schwanger's consent, Song Qingshu stretched out his hands and held Schwang horizontally in his arms. He felt the body in his arms was soft and hot, and he became even angrier. He turned around and glared at Elundi. Sister-in-law, I'll kill this despicable and shameless person for you. No, quickly take me away. Schwanger's fingers tightly clasped Song Qingshu's clothes, her voice trembling. She was clearly struggling to resist the drug in her body. At this time, the Tong residence's guards finally rushed in. Song Qingshu felt that it was indeed inconvenient for Schwanger to be seen by other people in this state, so he could only coldly snort at Elundi. Consider yourself lucky today. Finished speaking, he pushed off the ground and rushed out of the hole in the roof with Shuang in his arms. Along the way, the tips of his feet lightly tapped the ground, and very quickly, he was far away from the Tong residence. Suddenly, he felt a soft hand caressing his face. Song Qingshu immediately stopped and looked down at the beauty in his arms. Sister-in-law, how are you? Shuang face. Shuang T. Song's face. Shuang Tes on Tes. T-Ter voice. Shuang face was flushed, her red lips slightly opened and closed. The moist luster on her lips almost made Song Qingshu lose control and kiss her. Unknowingly, the collar of her shirt was pulled open, revealing her faintly discernible snow-white skin. Just as he reached out to rearrange her collar, who knew that she would pull it away again. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, Shuang is a good girl now. Put your clothes back on. No, I'm hot. Shuang pouted in a daze. Her moist lips explored Song Qingshu's neck as if she was looking for an antidote. Perhaps because she felt the warmth of Song Qingshu's skin, Shuang stuck out her little tongue and licked Song Qingshu. She hummed in satisfaction. Song Qingshu's whole body trembled, and he could no longer move. After hesitating for a long time, Song Qingshu still carried her to a certain place in the city. While avoiding Shuang attack, he sped up his pace. He wasn't Lu Xiaohui. As a normal man, if he took advantage of the situation and pushed Shuang down, Shuang wouldn't be able to say anything after she woke up. However, Song Qingshu didn't want to do this. In this world, it was enough to obtain some women's body, but there were some women that Song Qingshu was more greedy for. Not only did he want the other party's body, but he also wanted her heart. Therefore, Song Qingshu didn't plan to have that kind of relationship with Shuang while she was unconscious. Of course, this was also because Song Qingshu knew that he had a lot of opportunities to obtain Shuang's body. In addition to all kinds of previous experiences, he was able to resist Shuang's temptation. If he was still a virgin, his reason would still yield to his body's reaction. Bang, bang, bang. A famous wet nurse in the western part of the city stared dumbfoundedly at the two people at the door. A beautiful woman with disheveled clothing was lying in a man's embrace. Her whole body was wrapped around the man like an octopus. What made the wet nurse even more dumbfounded was that the woman actually tore open the man's lapel, pouting her small mouth as she moved closer to the man's chest. How can there be such a shameless woman in this world? This thought had just flashed through her mind when the wet nurse saw that the man casually stuffed a silver ingot into her hand. With an extremely hoarse voice, he said, "Give me a bowl of human milk, quickly." After the wet nurse recovered from her shock, although she felt that it was somewhat absurd, she wouldn't make life difficult for shiny silver. After she grabbed the bowl and examined its authenticity, she hastily nodded and said, "Young master, please wait a moment." After she finished speaking, she took the bowl and went into the inner room to start milking. Hearing the sounds in the inner room, although the wet nurse was clearly already speeding up the milking, Song Qingshu still felt that every second felt like a year. On one hand, he continuously pressed down Shuang's frantically grabbing hands, and on the other hand, he also tried to put as much distance as possible between him and the other's body to prevent the other's continuously wriggling delicate body from stimulating his wolfish nature. Human milk can be an aphrodisiac. I've only seen it in a game in my previous life. I hope that the Fox Morone wasn't talking nonsense. Looking at Shuang's current situation, Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Young master, the milk is here." The wet nurse's voice was like a voice from the heavens. In a state of great joy, Song Qingshu quickly took the bowl. "Thank you very much." The wet nurse felt her vision blur, and the man and woman had already disappeared. She couldn't help but be startled. She hastily took out the silver ingot and squeezed it a few times. Only then did she reveal a trace of a relaxed smile. Fortunately, the silver ingot is real. After she finished speaking, she hastily closed the door again. "Shuang be good. Quickly drink this bowl of milk." Next to a secluded riverside, Song Qing-shu lifted Shuang Er's neck and brought the bowl of milk to her mouth. Along the way, Song Qing-shu had carried Shuang Er for such a long distance, yet not a single drop of milk had spilled out of the bowl. It was clear that his qing gong was very good. Unexpectedly, Shuang Er desperately turned her head away and refused to drink no matter what. Song Qing-shu carefully protected the bowl of milk. He rejoiced endlessly. Fortunately, you didn't knock it over. Otherwise, where would I find another bowl for you in the middle of the night? I feel so uncomfortable. Shuang Er grabbed Song Qing-shu's hand and placed it on her chest, causing him to be dumbstruck. Shuang Er, when you wake up and remember these things, you'll definitely want to kill me. Song Qing-shu unnaturally withdrew his hand and muttered to the beautiful woman in his arms, even though he knew that she couldn't hear him. Song Qing-shu had thought of throwing Shuang Er directly into the river. From his point of view, if she was soaked in cold water, she would probably be gone. But at the last moment, he remembered He Tai's Ho in the back mountain of the Five Poison sect. At that time, He Tai's Ho also seemed to have been drugged with an aphrodisiac. The ice-cold lake water didn't have any effect. In the end, He Tai's Ho was the one who pushed Shuang Er down. On the other hand, Song Qing-shu was worried that Shuang Er's frail body wouldn't be able to withstand this oppressive cold. He was afraid that she would freeze and become seriously ill. He turned his head to look at the bowl of milk placed on the side and secretly clenched his teeth. Desperate horses are still alive. Let's try this. He picked up the bowl of milk and took a big gulp. Then he turned his head to kiss Shuang Er's mouth. This time, Shuang Er didn't dodge. Instead, she cooperated and sucked. Just like that, Song Qing-shu passed the milk little by little into Shuang Er's mouth. Unknowingly, Shuang Er had already drunk the whole bowl of milk. However, Song Qing-shu still kissed her passionately. At first, Shuang Er's fragrant tongue could be said to be very presumptuous and bold in responding. But at some point in time, she started to dodge. Song Qing-shu opened his eyes. Only then did he discover that Shuang Er's eyes were wide open as she stared at him in a daze. Big brother Song, I'm fine now. Shuang Er took the opportunity to push him away. She shyly lowered her head. Although the drug's effect had already worn off, her face was still very red. Shuang Er, you woke up? Song Qing-shu was overjoyed. Shuang Er replied like a mosquito. Her delicate head lightly nodded. Her gaze was fixed on the tip of her feet. Shuang Er, just now I was trying to save you. I've offended you. Song Qing-shu really wanted to give himself a slap. He painstakingly put on a virtuous appearance, but the last moment, all his efforts were in vain. He cursed in his heart. This human milk's detoxifying effect was too good. But how could he know that he was actually immersed in being intimate with Shuang Er? For a moment, he didn't realize that time had flown by. And I know, I don't blame you. After waking up, Shuang slowly remembered her previous unrestrained actions. She was so embarrassed that she almost wanted to find a hole to hide in. Shuang Er, don't take things too hard. If you think that your innocence has been damaged, then kill me with your sword. I definitely won't resist. Song Qing-shu saw that Shuang Er's expression was gloomy. He was worried that she would take things too hard and commit suicide. But you must not commit suicide for me. Otherwise, I would have died in vain. Shuang Er couldn't help but laugh. She couldn't help but feel ashamed and angry. Who would commit suicide for you? Besides, there's obviously no sword here. There's no sincerity at all. Having been seen through by Shuang, Song Qing-shu let out a hollow laugh. He wasn't some innocent young man. How could he really let her kill him? However, seeing that Shuang Er's expression had softened, he finally let out a sigh of relief. He promptly took off his coat and draped it over her body. As it turned out, Shuang Er's fragrant sweat was like rain earlier. Her entire body was already soaked. At this moment, when the cold wind blew, her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Feeling Song Qing-shu's considered action, Shuang Er sighed. Song Dage, why are you so good to me? Wei Xiongdi and I are sworn brothers. Naturally, I should take good care of you. Song Qing-shu's expression was somewhat unnatural. Is it really because of Xiao Bao? Shuang Er looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Song Qing-shu sighed in his heart. In his previous life, there was a saying circulating on the internet that the most suitable candidates to be a wife were Shuang-er and Xiao Zhao. However, he had always disagreed with this saying. In his opinion, in the original work, Shuang-er and Xiao Zhao were unavoidably too attached to men. They had somewhat lost their own souls. They were only empty code names. Who would have thought that in this world, Song Qing-shu would be deeply attracted to Shuang-er? Shuang-er was soft on the outside but hard on the inside. In fact, her heart was extremely opinionated. Among all the women that Song Qing-shu knew, based on appearance alone, perhaps it would be difficult for Shuang-er to enter the top 10. However, her every frown and every smile always had a kind of feeling that made people feel comfortable. Song Qing-shu liked this kind of feeling very much. Therefore, after he had schemed to kill Wei Xiaobao, he clearly could have easily snatched the other 6 copies of the 42-chapter sutra from Shuang-er's hands. However, he still chose to approach Shuang-er's heart without any hesitation. This was the stupidest method. Chapter 250. Seeing that Song Qing-shu had been silent, Shuang-er seemed to have thought of something, and her expression became unnatural. She said, Brother Song, did you see my 2 maids, Taoong and Liulu, at the Tong residence just now? Shuang-er, don't worry, I've already rescued them, said Song Qing-shu. Shuang-er nodded and wanted to stand up, but because of the medicine, she was as weak as if she had just recovered from serious illness. Her body swayed, and Song Qing-shu hurriedly got up to support her shoulder. Big Brother Song, can you take me back to the Viscount Mansion? I'm worried that Yan Dai won't let this go. If he comes to the door, I'm afraid that Miss Fong and Taohong Liulu will be in danger. Shuang-er shrank back without a trace, staying away from Song Qing-shu. I almost forgot about this. Song Qing-shu suddenly realized that if Yan Dai couldn't find him, he would probably go to the Wei residence to make trouble. Shuang-er was anxious. Although she wanted to hurry, her body was weak and her legs were soft. Every few steps, she had to stop to rest, panting. Song Qing-shu looked at her awkwardly. Shuang-er, there's still some distance from here to the Viscount Mansion. In your current condition, I'm afraid you won't be able to go back for a while. How about I carry you? He was about to explain that he didn't mean to take advantage of her and just wanted to hurry back to prevent Yan Dai from coming. But Shuang-er simply nodded. Thank you, Brother Song. Song Qing-shu was stunned. He didn't expect that at this critical moment, Shuang-er didn't want to be pretentious like other women. He couldn't help but reveal a smile, hold her waist in his arms, and use his qigong to rush to the Viscount Mansion. Perhaps it was because she had suffered too many fright tonight, or perhaps it was because the medicine was too harmful to her body, but when Shuang-er's face pressed against Song Qing-shu's chest, she could feel a warm and comfortable aura. At first, Shuang-er was a little nervous, but before long, she couldn't resist the exhaustion of her body and slowly closed her eyes. In order not to wake her up, Song Qing-shu deliberately controlled the frequency of his steps to make his body as flat as possible. Shuang-er, wake up! Shuang-er opened her eyes in a daze and saw that Song Qing-shu's face was very close to hers, calling out to her. Realizing that she was still lying in the other's embrace, she hastily jumped down in embarrassment. When she saw that there seemed to be traces of her saliva on the other's chest and lapel, she felt extremely embarrassed. I'm sorry, Big Brother Song. Just now, I couldn't hold back and fell asleep. It's okay. Song Qing-shu smiled and shook his head. His mind was in a trance. Who was the last girl who drooled in his arms? We're already near the Viscount's mansion. If I carry you back directly, it will damage your reputation. Song Qing-shu quickly woke up from the memory of the past. Many thanks for Big Brother Song's consideration. Shuang-er said gratefully. The two of them fell into silence at the same time. Suddenly, there was a noisy noise coming from the corner of the street. Song Qing-shu's countenance changed. Not good. It seems to be coming from the Viscount Mansion. Hastily, he pulled Shuang-er and rushed over. The Viscount Mansion had been surrounded by officers and soldiers. The person in the lead was the young master of the Tong family, Yan Dai. Dian was leading the stick people to protect Fong, Yi, Tao Hong, and Liu behind them, nervously confronting the other side. Young Master Tong, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to openly surround the mansion of an important minister of the imperial court, Song Qingshu said in a clear voice. Big brother Song, Shuang Madam. When Dian and Fong Yi saw the two of them clearly, they were overjoyed and cried out. Dai turned his head to look at the two of them. His eyes couldn't help but focus. Song Qingshu's figure was exactly the same as the masked man who had rescued Shuang How could he not know who had ruined his good deed? Then he saw Shuang clear eyes, her delicate face, leaning against Song Qingshu like a little bird. He was very clear about the effects of I love of firewood. The only way to detoxify it was to have intercourse. He immediately felt a burst of fury in his heart. Damn, I painstakingly planted a tree, but this F***er plucked the fruit. So it's Darren's song. What can I do for you? His subordinates had long since reported to him Song Qingshu's identity. Dai naturally knew that Song Qingshu was in the limelight at the moment, so he had no misgivings. Mobilizing troops in the middle of the night without permission, does young Master Tong know that this matter is neither big nor small? Song Qingshu stretched out his fingers and gently pushed aside the swords and sabers in front of him. Protecting Shuang he walked to Fong Yi's side. The soldiers were afraid of his reputation as the #1 expert in the capital and didn't dare to stop him. Seeing the situation in front of him, Dai couldn't help but feel suffocated. If it was an ordinary household, he would have directly ordered his subordinates to use force. But thinking of the legendary martial arts of Song Qingshu, Dai had no choice but to change his strategy. Song Darren misunderstood. It's just that 2 female cat burglars entered the Tong residence tonight. We chased after the thieves and chased them here. On the way, we just happened to run into Admiral Jioman. He dispatched a group of soldiers to help me. Song Qingshu naturally knew he was talking nonsense. Shuang and Fong He had indeed broken into the Tong residence in the middle of the night, but that was several hours ago. Fong Yi had long since returned. How could it be that they had chased after the female cat burglars? Running into Admiral Jioman was even more nonsense. Who in the capital didn't know that Admiral Jioman had always had a close relationship with the Tong family? It was a small matter for Dai to mobilize 100 soldiers. However, Song Qingshu didn't intend to expose his lies. First, there was no evidence. Second, it was meaningless. He couldn't help but sneer and say, I wonder if young Master Tong has found the female cat burglars. Of course I have found them, Dai said with a fake smile. When the 2 female cat burglars escaped, one of the female cat burglars was injured in the shoulder by a family soldier in the residence. Song Darren, don't you think it's a coincidence? Madame Fong seems to have also injured her shoulder. My subordinates also found a bloody night suit in Madame Fong's room. As he spoke, he took the night suit handed over by his subordinate and shook it in front of everyone. The size and style were clearly worn by a woman, and there were traces of a knife cut on the arm. With the light of the fire, the bloodstains were faintly visible. How could you let them enter the residence to search? Song Qingshu glared at Dian fiercely and secretly cursed. If he had been here just now, he definitely wouldn't have allowed them to search, and he wouldn't have been caught red-handed by them. They had a lot of people and rushed in. We couldn't figure out the situation, so we could only protect the safety of the family members in the residence first. Dian's face turned red. He didn't expect that the first task given to him would be ruined. He couldn't help but feel very embarrassed. Song Qingshu also knew that he couldn't be blamed. He didn't expect Dai to bring a large number of soldiers here so openly. That was why he sent more than a dozen experts to guard the Viscount's residence, thinking that it was more than enough to deal with ordinary hooligans. Young Master Tong, you must be joking. The injury on Miss Fong's body was accidentally hurt when I was practicing martial arts with her during the day. As for this night's suit, maybe the female cat burglar put it in Miss Fong's room to deliberately frame her, Song Qingshu said. Really? I think the size and style of this night suit Miss Fong's figure very well. Otherwise, We can let Miss Fong try it on and see if Miss Fong's wound coincidentally matches the knife mark on the suit. Yan Dai took the knight's suit and put it on Fong Yi's body, clicking his tongue. Song Qingshu knew that this was very unfavorable to his side, so he thought that he had to protect Fong Yi no matter what. It was not wise to dwell on the female cat burglar's words, so he quickly changed the topic. Miss Fong is Lord Wei's widow. Lord Wei sacrificed his life for the country, and now his corpse is not cold. Young Master Tong's actions will inevitably make the ministers in the court look down on you. Yan Dai didn't care. He shook his head and said, I'm not deliberately looking for trouble. I just found out that this second wife of Fong Yi is actually a member of the Mu Palace, a remnant of the former Ming dynasty. The Mu Palace has always been engaged in the business of fighting against the Qing and restoring the Ming. They sent such a beautiful woman to lurk around Lord Wei. Their motive is really suspicious. Moreover, Lord Wei's death is full of doubts. I have reason to suspect that this second wife of Fong Yi may have played a dishonorable role. Guards, take Fong Yi's second wife away and interrogate her properly. Yes, the soldiers roared, shaking Fong Yi so much that her face turned pale. Who dares? Song Qingshu stretched out his hand and stood in front of Fong Yi. The soldiers couldn't help but look at each other in dismay, hesitating to move forward. Could it be that Song Darren wants to shield this traitor? This crime is much more serious than mobilizing soldiers at night. Yan Dai sneered. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Song Qingshu had to have a reason to evade. His mind raced, and he quickly came up with an idea. Young Master Tong must have heard that His Majesty has recently established the stick office. Fong Yi's case will be investigated by my stick office. Yan Dai was startled. He didn't expect that a stick office would appear out of nowhere. This organization was quite mysterious, and he had also heard of it. Just as he didn't know what to do, one of his subordinates whispered in his ear. Yan Dai was immediately overjoyed and said, Don't forget, His Majesty has only given the stick office the power to investigate and arrest, but not the power to interrogate. Song Qingshu was startled. The stick office would have the power to interrogate sooner or later, just like the Eastern faction guards of the former Ming dynasty. But now that the stick office had been established, Kangxi really hadn't relented in this aspect. He couldn't help but look unsightly. Then I wonder what identity young Master Tong is using to arrest people? If you are representing the Tong family, I'm afraid the Tong family still doesn't have this power. If you're representing the Nine Gates Admiral, it's not impossible. It's just that the security of the capital has always been under the jurisdiction of the Shuntian prefectural magistrate. Young Master Tong is somewhat overstepping your authority. That's good. I'll send someone to invite the Shuntian prefectural magistrate. Yan Dai snorted coldly and gave a look. A family guard quickly ran to the Shuntian prefectural magistrate. Song Qingshu turned his head and looked at Fong Yi. In a deep voice, he said, Miss Fong, today's matter is difficult to resolve. I'm afraid Miss Fong will have to go to the Shuntian prefectural magistrate and stay for a few days. The Shuntian prefectural magistrate is the Nayland family's territory. The Tong family's hands can't reach there. I'll talk to Nayland Mingzhu. The Shuntian prefectural magistrate probably won't make things difficult for you. Miss Fong, don't worry. I'll definitely find a way to rescue you. If it was only the case of the female cat burglar, it wouldn't matter if Song Qingshu protected Fong Yi. However, Yan Dai pointed out Fong Yi's identity as a member of the Mu Palace. Within the Manchurian Qing's borders, all cases related to the anti-Qing and restoring the Ming organizations were major cases. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Song Qingshu had no way to cover it up. He had no choice but to find a relatively good solution to first protect Fong Yi. Seeing Fong Yi's pale face and the seemingly panicked expression in her eyes, Song Qingshu moved closer to her ear and whispered, Miss Fong, don't worry. If all the methods on the surface fail, I'll rescue you even if it's a prison break. Chapter 251. The Tong family's young master had led his troops to surround Wei Xiaobao's Viscount mansion. The magistrate of Shuntian had already received the news of such a big event, and was on his way here. Coincidentally, he ran into Elundai's family general and quickly rushed over. Before this, Song Qing-shu and Elundai had already reached a consensus subconsciously. The magistrate of Shun Tian quickly took Fong Yi away. Seeing Fong Yi constantly looking back, Song Qing-shu had no choice but to use secret voice sending to say, "Miss Fong, please believe me." Hearing his voice, Fong Yi's whole body trembled. She gently nodded and obediently followed the magistrate. Elundai secretly cursed his bad luck. This time, not only did he not get either Schwanger or Fong Yi, but he also offended Song Qing-shu. However, he didn't show it on his face. When he left, he came to the two of them and said in an inaudible voice, "Darren Song, you should thank me. If it weren't for me, how could you enjoy endless luck with women so easily?" Finished speaking, he laughed and swaggered away, leaving behind Schwanger with an ugly expression. "Schwanger, don't bother with this kind of villain." Song Qing-shu looked at Schwanger worriedly. Unexpectedly, Schwanger nodded without a care. Elundai thinks all men are as disgusting as him. How could he know there's a gentleman like Darren Song in the world? Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. "Schwanger, I don't want to be a gentleman either. In fact, I'm a bit greedier than Elundai." Schwanger was startled, but she was exceptionally intelligent and quickly understood Song Qing-shu's unspoken words. She couldn't help but tremble and subconsciously fell into silence. "Schwanger, you two have good rest first. It's too late today. Tomorrow morning, I'll find someone to help mediate. Now, Elundai shouldn't stir up trouble again. With Di-yun and the others guarding, you can also sleep in peace." Song Qing-shu broke the silence. Taoong and Liulu helped Schwanger back to the room and began to chatter. "Madam, Darren Song is really a good person. Yes. Tonight, I was ready to die in the Tong mansion. I didn't expect Darren Song to save us first. Could it be that Darren Song has taken a fancy to you? Bah. It's obviously because of Madam's face that he treats us differently because of her." Schwang-er's face blushed deep red from their conversation. She really could not bear to listen anymore. "What are you talking about?" She spat. "Song Dage and Xiao Bao are sworn brothers. What's wrong with them taking care of us?" "Young madam, in this world, let alone sworn brothers, I'm afraid there are only a handful of people who would be willing to offend the powerful Tong family for their brother. I don't believe that he really cares about his brotherhood with Wei Juyi. I'm afraid he has ulterior motives." The two servant girls started to discuss again. They had long felt that Song Qing-shu seemed to treat Schwanger differently from the others. In the past, because of Schwanger's identity, there was a knot in their hearts. Tonight, when she was on the verge of death and was saved by Song Qing-shu, they immediately changed sides and spoke up for Song Qing-shu. "If you keep spouting nonsense, I'll tear your mouths apart." Schwanger laughed and scolded. She knew that the two servant girls were not afraid of her. Her eyes were wide open. Not long after lying on the bed, she could not help but think of the things she had done in the previous night. Some of her actions made her so shy that she covered her head with the quilt. Early the next morning, Song Qing-shu arrived at the imperial palace. Of course, he did not directly go to find Kangxi. After receiving Dolong's advice, he also understood that Kangxi's current attitude was to look on coldly from the sidelines. After wandering around the palace for a while, he quickly found the young master of the Nailan family, Nailan Xingda. "If life is only like the first time we met, why does the autumn wind grieve the painting fan? To be able to write such exquisite words, Brother Nailan is indeed dignified. At first glance, I can tell that you are the man that women dream of." As the son of the Nailan family's master, Nailan Xingda had recently been conferred the title of first-class imperial bodyguard. Seeing his handsome appearance, Song Qing-shu sincerely sighed. Darren Song is too kind. Although he said so, Nailan Xingda still could not hide the pride on his face. At this time, he was young and in the prime of his life. Although he had the innate shrewdness of a son of an aristocratic family, he still could not be as indifferent as his father, Ming Zhu. Looking at the man in front of him, who in his previous life had become popular all over the country because of an ease, "If life is only like the first time we met," and had become a dream of thousands of young girls, Song Qing-shu could not help but be a little absent-minded. He pulled Nailan Xingda along and talked about everything under the sun. Very quickly, he gained Nailan Xingda's favor. Chatting with Song Qing-shu, Nailan Xingda felt that he had met a lifelong confidant. He was good at writing lyrics, and his colleagues often praised him. However, if it was not for his father's sake, they could not praise him properly. On the contrary, Song Qing-shu's evaluation of him as seeing things with the eyes of nature and expressing emotions with the tongue of nature was really in line with his taste. However, how could he know that Song Qing-shu had merely plagiarized Wang Guowei's words? After seeing that the two were familiar enough with each other, Song Qing-shu put forward his own idea. He wanted to use Nailan Xingda to introduce him to Nailan Mingzhu. Although Song Qing-shu was now considered a popular person in front of Kangxi, he did not have a close relationship with the important ministers in the court like Wei Xiaobao in the past. Before this, he had no friendship with Nailan Mingzhu. He was worried that if he directly went to Nailan Mingzhu's door, he would be perfunctorily brushed off by Nailan Xingda. Darren Song is eager for justice. He really has the ancient style. Nailan Xingda sincerely praised. As the saying goes, when a person finds a person pleasing to the eye, his shortcomings are no longer shortcomings. Not to mention Nailan Xingda, a self-righteous scholar, who had long disliked Olundai's bullying of Wei Xiaobao's widow. Under Nailan Xingda's arrangement, Song Qing-shu met Nailan Mingzhu, the current head of the Nailan family, in the Nailan mansion that afternoon. Having given birth to such a handsome son like Nailan Xingda, he naturally would not have the wretched image in the TV series. Although he was already middle-aged, he was still quite handsome. Unfortunately, his brandy nose ruined the overall impression. Before Song Qing-shu could speak, Nailan Mingzhu sighed. Darren Song, we are both officials in the same court. Although we do not have any personal relationship, I have long been acquainted with your character. I already know what happened last night. Darren Song, considering his friendship with Wei Ju in the past, took the blame for his family. I admire Darren Song very much. However, Nailan Mingzhu's words suddenly changed, causing Song Qing-shu's heart to immediately hang. Allow this old man to flaunt my seniority and advise you. Darren Song, it's better not to get involved in this matter. If things go wrong, I'm afraid even your excellency will be involved. Song Qing-shu disapprovingly said, although the Tong family is powerful now, Song Mao is not yet afraid of them. Nailan Mingzhu shook her head, her eyes gazing into the distance, seemingly lost in her memories. With Darren Song's current power, you naturally won't be afraid of the Tong family. Although the Tong family's various actions can be considered Darren Wei's own fault that day, bullying a group of widows is truly contemptible. To be honest with Darren Song, this old man's relationship with Darren Wei has always been good. Do you know why I've always been watching coldly from the sidelines? In fact, in his heart, Song Qing-shu more or less despised Song Gotu, Mingzhu, and the others. After Wei Xiaobao's death, it was as if he had changed into another person, allowing Shuang to be bullied by others. Listening to him now, Song Qing-shu immediately understood that perhaps there was another reason. He promptly asked, I hope Nailan Darren can give me some advice. I can't give you advice. Nailan Mingzhu forced a smile. It's not that we don't want to help, it's that we can't. Can't help. Song Qing-shu was baffled. Although the Nailan family and the Suo family's current prestige was inferior to the Tong family, which had produced several empresses in a row, if they joined forces, how could they be afraid of the Tong family? That's right, we can't help. Nailan Mingzhu nodded. Song Darren, during the morning court session today, the Assistant Minister of Justice presented a memorial, accusing Wei Ju of embezzling 1,000,000 taels of silver from Oboi's family property when he confiscated the Oboi mansion. Song Qing-shu was frightened out of his wits. He thought that according to the original work, that 1,000,000 taels was clearly divided equally between Wei Xiaobao and Song Goda. Who would dare to risk universal condemnation and dare to mention this matter again? As if she could guess what he was thinking, Nailan Mingzhu said, Song Darren is not an outsider. I am not afraid to tell you the truth. I've also heard about the matter of Oh Boy's family property being confiscated that day. In the end, the embezzled 1,000,000 taels was divided equally between Wei Darin and Song Go-tu. However, this kind of matter can be considered as a common occurrence among the high-ranking ministers of the imperial court, so they did not take it seriously. If Wei Darin was still alive, it would be all right, but now that he is dead, naturally Tong family has no more misgivings, hence they expose this old matter. Other people might not know clearly which family's dog is the assistant minister of justice, but how can I, Nayland Mingzhu, not know? Humph! Nayland Mingzhu snorted coldly and continued. However, Tong family's cleverness lies in the fact that they framed Song Go-tu's embezzled 500,000 taels on Wei Juai's head. In any case, Wei Juai is already dead. He has no way to defend himself. In this way, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, naturally Song Go-tu did not dare to make any noise. We, his old friends of the past, also did not dare to speak out for justice. First, Wei Darin did indeed embezzle this sum of money. Second, hey, if we're not careful, we might drag Song Go-tu into the water. This kind of strenuous but fruitless affair, moreover, it is easy to offend the Suo family. Nobody in the imperial court will do it. Song Darin, do you understand? Song Qingshu could not stop his hands and feet from turning ice cold. He thought that this group of politicians really ate people without spitting out the bones. They did not have eternal enemies, only eternal interests. After weighing the pros and cons, they decisively gave up on Wei Xiaobao. They were indeed ruthless enough. Song Darin, please set your heart at ease. Fang Erforinth will not encounter any trouble in Shun Tianfu. I will send word to the people below to receive her well. However, I can only do this and nothing more. As for how this case will be judged, it will be up to His Majesty. Nayland Mingzhu picked up the teacup and used the lid to smooth the water. Thank you very much, Nayland Darin. Song Qingshu understood that the other side had issued the order to expel him. He got up and walked toward the imperial palace. Along the way, his heart grew colder and colder. Originally, he thought that this time Olundai was clearly in the wrong. Who would have thought that under the Tong family's operation, one ring after another, the victim Wei mansion unexpectedly fell into a desperate situation. Right now, let alone Feng, even Shuang, might not necessarily be able to stay out of this matter. Returning to the imperial palace, he asked the imperial bodyguard and found out that Kangxi was in the imperial study. Hastily, he rushed over. As he entered the door, before he could open his mouth, he heard Kangxi said in a rage, Qingshu, you came just in time. Zhen trusted Wei Xiaobao so much in vain. I did not expect him to be this audacious to the extreme. Zhen can guess one or two things about his embezzlement. Previously, I thought he only embezzled several tens of thousands of taels. Hey, only today did I know that he actually dared to embezzle 1,000,000 taels. Kangxi threw the teacup heavily on the floor. What a good Wei Xiaobao, 1,000,000 taels. The year before last, Shandong suffered a great drought. Zhen wanted to provide disaster relief. I tried every possible way, and only then did I manage to scrape together 200,000 taels from the national treasury. This dog slave unexpectedly embezzled 1,000,000 taels in one go. Finished speaking, he threw the memorial in his hand on the floor. Song Qingshu's countenance was gloomy. He picked up the memorial on the floor and read it. Only then did he realize that this was the result of the investigation Kangxi had sent people to investigate. On the day of the search and seizure of Oh Boy's mansion, the imperial bodyguards, as well as the steward's confession. According to what was written, it was completely Wei Xiaobao who was extremely audacious to the extreme. He quietly embezzled such a large sum of money. Between the lines, there was not a single word mentioned about Songgu. Song Qingshu felt a cold air assaulting him. No wonder nobody dared to speak. Whoever spoke at this time would not only offend the Tong family, he would also offend the Suo family. Thinking of Shuang's delicate appearance, Song Qingshu was just about to speak out for justice. Who would have thought that Kangxi directly opened his mouth and said, Wei Xiaobao, this dog slave, not only is he corrupt and perverted the law, he is also greedy and lustful. Unexpectedly, he dared to commit adultery with Princess Janning. At the same time, he caused tension between Wu Sangue, Hongli, and the imperial court. His crime is simply unforgivable. Issue an imperial decree for Zhen to deprive Wei Xiaobao of all his honors when he was alive. All his family members are to be sent to the musical house as a warning to others. Some time ago, I had something to do, and now I am beginning to recover. However, bearing in mind the previous lesson, now I won't say how much I can update every day, I'll just do my best. After all, I don't know if there will be any unexpected situation. If I can't fulfill my promise, you will suffer, and I will also suffer. Just like the great vow in Buddhism, once I have completed proving my way. Chapter 252. Song Qingshu turned pale with fright. But no buts. Kangxi stared at him with a gloomy face. Zhen has already opened my golden mouth. What else do you want to say? Even if Wei Xiaobao made a mistake in the past, what does it have to do with his family? I hope your majesty will consider your friendship with Wei Darren in the past and think twice. Song Qingshu braced himself and said, "It is because I still have some friendship with this dog slave that I did not send his family to Ningguda to be slaves for the armored people." Kangxi impatiently waved his hand. "All right, I am tired. You can leave now." Kangxi was already very angry that Wei Xiaobao had a secret relationship with Janning and ruined his important matter. Now that his embezzlement of 1,000,000 taels was exposed, it was like adding hail to snow, exposing all the dissatisfaction that Kangxi had suppressed in his heart. This time, he severely punished the Wei family, not without the intention of killing one to warn 100. In the past, Wei Xiaobao and he had such a good relationship. If he committed a crime, he would still be punished. Other people would inevitably have to think twice before doing anything. Song Qingshu walked toward the door with a gloomy face. He did not expect that Kangxi would suddenly call out to him. "Qingshu, recently the capital has not been very peaceful. You are highly skilled in martial arts. You will carry out the search of Wei Xiaobao's house. Shuang, and the others will also be sent to the musical house by you. I do not want any problems to occur along the way. If there is a problem, I will use military law to deal with it. You must be doubly careful." Being looked at deeply by Kangxi, Song Qingshu only felt a chill in his heart. Perhaps Kangxi had also guessed his intention. That was why he specially sent him to carry it out. If he secretly rescued Shuang, it would be a serious dereliction of duty. Seeing that Kangxi did not care about old friendship with Wei Xiaobao, Song Qingshu could not predict how he would deal with him when the time came. Coming out of the imperial study, looking at the bright blue sky, Song Qingshu's mood was relaxed. He could not help but ponder. As the saying goes, accompanying the ruler is like accompanying a tiger. Today I have seen it with my own eyes. It seems that I am more comfortable being the boss. When the house was searched and confiscated, Wei Xiaobao's Viscount mansion was in a mess. The maids and servants wept and wept. When Song Qingshu finished reading the imperial edict, Tao Hong, Liu Lu, and Shuang cursed and swore, but Shuang expression was very calm. I didn't expect Kangxi to be so heartless. Shuang I will definitely save you. Song Qingshu signaled for his subordinates to leave, leaving the two of them alone. Shuang showed a faint smile. Song Dage, I have never doubted you. I know you must have tried your best. Don't blame those two girls, Tao Hong and Liu Lu. After they came back that night, they kept saying good things about you in front of me. In the end, when you brought people to search their house today, they just couldn't accept it. I also didn't expect Kangxi to arrange it like this, Song Qingshu said in distress. Originally, I planned to save you and take you far away. Who knew that Kangxi would send me to escort you? It's really... Hearing him say that he would take her far away, Shuang knew that the other party did not mean that, but her pretty face still flushed uncontrollably. Song Dage, don't worry. I also have a rough understanding of martial arts. For a short time inside, I can still protect myself and them. It's just that I need to trouble Song Dage with something. What is it? As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it without hesitation. Song Qingshu said. Shuang was about to speak, but when her gaze fell on the official robe he was wearing, she became somewhat hesitant. After all, this matter was related to other people's safety. Can I trust you? Song Qingshu sighed, held Shuang shoulder, and stared into her eyes. We have experienced so many things between us. I thought you wouldn't ask such a thing. Thinking of the first time they met, she was taken advantage of by him when he was drunk, and later, when she was about to commit suicide, she was hugged by him and slept for a night. Plus that night, she was drugged by Olundai, the two of them. Shuang could not tell what kind of feeling she had for him at the moment, but subconsciously she still trusted him very much. So she had to apologize and said, "Of course I trust you, but this matter is related to other people's lives, so I'm really a little worried." Shuang paused and then continued, "Brother Song, after you send us to the musical house, go to the vicinity of the bridge to find a butcher named Qian Laoben and tell him about our current situation. At that time, someone will naturally come to save us. Because, big brother, you have already completed the handover. Kangxi can't punish you for the crime of dereliction of duty." Shuang was indeed exceptionally intelligent. She quickly realized Song Qingshu's difficulties. Now that they were in danger, she first considered for his sake. Song Qingshu asked, "Are you planning to look for people from Tian Dihui to save you?" Shuang was terrified. "Turns out, big brother, you already know, previously in Shandong, I also had a chance meeting with Tian Dihui's Onduozu, Chen Jinan." Song Qingshu nodded. "I also know about Wei Xiaobao being the incense master of Tian Dihui's Greenwood Hall." Seeing Shuang deathly pale complexion, Song Qingshu promptly said, "You can rest assured, I have never told anyone else about this. The people in the imperial court do not know." Shuang finally let out a sigh of relief. Looking Song Qingshu up and down, she pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Song Dage, only now do I dare to trust you without reservation. It's not like you haven't done anything in front of me." Song Qingshu saw that his slight words suddenly made Shuang blush, so he quickly changed his words and said, "Right, I think it's better not to involve Tian Dihui in this. I always feel that this time Kangxi was a bit too strict with Wei Xiaobao. Maybe he wants to take this opportunity to get rid of Tian Dihui." Song Qingshu had not thought about this at all. It was only when he heard Shuang asking for help from Tian Dihui that he reacted. According to the original plot, because Tian Dihui had a traitor, not long after Wei Xiaobao joined Tian Dihui, Kangxi already knew about it. It was only because Wei Xiaobao was still useful that he kept his composure. This time, Kangxi sent Wei Xiaobao's widow to the musical house. It was inevitable that he wanted to take this opportunity to wipe out Tian Dihui in one fell swoop. After all, the people of Tian Dihui put the word righteousness above everything else. There was no reason for them to let Shuang be bullied like this. "What should we do?" Shuang's face turned pale. "Don't you still have me?" Song Qingshu said, "If Tian Dihui wants to contact them, it's just that they have to bide their time. After a period of time, when Kangxi finds that no one from Tian Dihui will come to his rescue, let's see how he will react, and then we can figure out what his plan is. Indeed, we shouldn't let the brothers of Tian Dihui take the risk." Shuang nodded, and then suddenly looked embarrassed. "But I'm a bit afraid of a place like the musical house. Just now, who said that she had a rough understanding of martial arts and could protect herself?" Song Qingshu gave her a strange look, and when she was about to get angry, he quickly said, "Don't worry. I can't bear to leave you alone in that kind of place of tigers and wolves. You can indeed deal with ordinary people, but if a Lundai comes to you, I'm afraid you really can't deal with him." "What do you mean by can't bear to leave? It's so unpleasant to hear." Shuang said angrily, but she knew that he was telling the truth. She had heard a lot about the means of dealing with disobedient girls in the lovely spring courtyard. As an official brothel, the musical house must have more means. Moreover, if a Lundai came to her door and asked for her because she was already an official prostitute, she really had no way to deal with him. She couldn't help but slightly tremble. "Shuang, so I need you to put on a show with me." Song Qing-shu said with a strange smile. In the following period of time, a strange thing happened in the capital. Nowadays, the deputy director of the imperial bodyguards, Song Qing-shu, was actually loitering around the musical house all day long. After some people investigated, they found out that he spent a lot of money to keep a girl named Shuang. In the capital, it was very popular for high officials and nobles to visit prostitutes, but generally, they just played around and went home after having fun. Unlike Song Qing-shu, who didn't go home and lived in a brothel at night. Unlike most officials who secretly despised him for not having self-respect, the girls in the brothel admired Song Qing-shu very much, and they all called him the second Lu Sanbian. Lu Sanbian. Hearing Shuang-er's words, Song Qing-shu, who was enjoying Tao Hong and Liu Lu's massage, shook his head and said with a wry smile, "I don't want to be like Lu Sanbian." After his death, no one cared about him, and it was a group of brothel girls who pooled money to bury him. Brother Song, of course, is not Lu Sanbian. But if it goes on like this, I'm afraid your reputation will be the same as Lu Sanbian's, and it will affect your future. Shuang-er plucked a grape and stuffed it into his mouth. Recently, they had been playing around. In order to deceive the eyes and ears of people, they naturally had some similar intimate actions. Later, the two felt that it couldn't be more normal. Reputation. Song Qing-shu sneered. My reputation can't be worse, so I don't need to worry about it. And the biggest difference between me and Lu Sanbian is that his future needs the emperor's grace, but my future can be earned by myself. A clamor suddenly came from outside. The door was suddenly slammed open. The procuress looked apologetically at Song Qing-shu. Song Darren, I really can't stop Master Tong. Song Qing-shu nodded and motioned for her to leave. Looking at the flustered and exasperated Alundai, he said unhurriedly, Master Tong, we don't seem to have any friendship. During this time, you've repeatedly barged in to find me. What exactly do you want? Olundai snorted coldly. Song, I really admire you. During this time, you've always been here to protect Shuang-er. I can't find a single gap. Song Qing-shu had a smug expression. During this time, he had spent most of his time in Shuang-er's room. When the imperial palace had business and he had to leave, he would arrange for people to guard the door. Once he finished his business, he would quickly return from the imperial palace. Olundai had wanted Shuang-er to serve him time and time again, but in the end, he hadn't found a single opportunity. Olundai's expression suddenly changed. He sneered and said, Song Darren, compared to you, my methods are really too crude. I tried everything, but I couldn't get Miss Shuang-er. Instead, step by step, I pushed her into your arms. Unlike you, the hero who saved the damsel in distress, making her willingly throw herself into your arms. You can't leave me out of this cup of wine to thank the matchmaker. Poor Wei Xiaobao. His bones haven't even turned cold when his wife was taken by his former brother. Watching Olundai swagger away, Shuang-er's face was shrouded in a layer of frost. Song Qing-shu promptly withdrew his feet from the stool and motioned for Tao Hong and Liu Lu to leave first. Cautiously looking at her, he said, Shuang, he's completely sowing discord. There's nothing between us. Don't you know it yourself? Chapter 253. Fong Yi was rescued from the prison of Shuntian Prefecture. Presumably, Yundai won't be able to find her. Song Qing-shu said, I'm afraid that Yundai found someone to kidnap Sister Fong. Then she'll probably suffer. Shuang-er looked worried. Shuntian Prefecture is the territory of Nalan clan. No matter how powerful Tong clan is, they can't reach there. If I'm not wrong, she should be rescued by Mu Palace's people. Shuang-er, don't worry. I've already sent people to investigate. Although Song Qing-shu comforted her like this, his heart was shrouded by a shadow. Mu Palace's population was now declining, and their martial arts were not so good. He was afraid that they didn't have the ability to rescue her. I hope Sister Fong is a good person. Shuang-er sighed faintly and no longer spoke. The room immediately fell into an awkward silence. Shuang-er, accompany me to drink. Song Qingshu knew that it was not a solution to continue wasting time like this, so he said, "Okay." Shuang, it was obviously not used to such a state of silence, and agreed. Darren Song, let's go prepare wine and food. Taoong and Liulu looked at each other and slipped out. Shuang didn't even have time to stop them. These two girls, why are they running so fast? Shuang said gloomily, now they always call me Darren Song, and don't even call me madam. I don't know who their master is. Song Qingshu secretly praised them. These two servant girls learned to read people's expressions since they were young. How could they not see the ambiguous relationship between him and their mistress? They didn't call her madam because they were afraid of being disliked. As a matter of fact, they would leave the two alone whenever they had the chance. It seemed that the Tong mansion had saved them once and unintentionally gained their approval. These two girls, there's obviously wine in the room, but they insist on going outside to find it. Song Qingshu picked up the wine pot on the side and scolded with a smile. Shuang didn't know what to think. Her ears turned red and she stood there in silence. Miss Shuang, why are you so ignorant of the rules? Why are you just standing there like a fool? Aren't you going to accompany me for a drink? Song Qingshu said with a smile. The two of them had been joking around quite a bit recently. Unexpectedly, Shuang-er's eyes immediately turned red when she heard his words. Brother Song, do you really think I'm a girl from brothel? How could I? Song Qingshu scrambled to explain. My good Shuang-er, I was wrong. It's all because I couldn't control this cheap mouth of mine. With that said, he waved his hand, preparing to give himself a big slap. Shuang-er was startled and quickly grabbed his wrist. Shuang-er, who is your good Shuang-er? You're not angry anymore? Song Qingshu looked at her carefully. I'm not angry anymore. Shuang-er shook her head and was about to withdraw her hand. Feeling the smoothness of her skin, Song Qingshu impulsively grabbed her wrist and pulled it into his arms. Shuang-er lost her balance, and her whole body suddenly fell onto his lap. Let me go. Shuang was ashamed and angry at the same time. She was well-versed in martial arts, so she was worried that she might injure Song Qingshu if she struggled, so she only used 50% of her strength. Who would have thought that Song Qingshu's hand would wrap around her shoulder? His arms pressed him tightly in his embrace, making it impossible for him to get up. Drink this cup of wine first, then I'll let you go. Song Qingshu picked up a wine cup and placed it next to her moist lips as he said with a smile. You're such a rascal. Shuang-er pursed her lips and glared at him hatefully. Through the thin layer of clothing, Song Qingshu could feel Shuang-er's alluring and delicate body gradually had a reaction. Shuang-er seemed to sense something. With a somewhat trembling voice, she said, If I drink, will you let me go? Of course. Song Qingshu also felt his throat go dry. Shuang-er stretched out her hand, wanting to take the wine cup. Who would have thought that Song Qingshu, who was holding the wine cup, pulled back? Immediately, she looked at him in confusion. Open your mouth, I'll feed you. Song Qingshu's voice was exceptionally gentle. Shuang-er's face revealed a struggling expression, but the incessant heat coming from her buttocks made her somewhat weak. She only wanted to quickly struggle free from the other's demonic claws, so she helplessly nodded. Seeing Song Qingshu slowly bring the wine cup closer to her lips, Shuang-er's lips slightly parted and she slightly moved closer. Who would have thought that the other would withdraw his hand again? This happened again and again. Shuang-er immediately said angrily, If you do this again, I won't drink anymore. All right. I promise I won't tease you again. Song Qingshu promptly apologized. In order to avoid being fooled by his hand movements, Shuang-er simply closed her eyes. Hurry up and feed me. I won't be fooled again. Seeing Shuang-er's slightly trembling eyelashes, her slightly parted lips shining with an exceptionally enchanting moist luster, Song Qingshu couldn't help but stare blankly. Looking at the wine cup in his hand, he very straightforwardly threw it behind him and directly leaned over to kiss her. Shuang-er also didn't expect this kind of situation to occur. Her pair of eyes immediately opened wide, opening the man's face so close to hers. The emotions in her heart were exceptionally complicated. After the initial subconscious resistance, Song Qingshu felt Schwanger's body gradually soften. Her whole body's struggle also became negligible. In his heart, he was delighted, greedily tasting the beauty's fragrant tongue. After a long time of lips parting, Schwanger's chest was unsteady. She stared blankly at Song Qingshu, her eyes revealing a pleading expression. Big brother Song, don't be like this, okay? Tao Hong and Liu Lu will be back soon. Seeing that the other party didn't fly into a rage, Song Qingshu inwardly thought that there was hope. Moving closer to her ear, he said, Good Schwanger, as long as they come back, I will stop violating you. What do you say? Okay. Being blown by the hot breath from his mouth. At this moment, Schwanger was also somewhat confused and infatuated. She thought in her heart, these two girls have already gone out for a period of time. Presumably the food and wine should be more or less ready. They should be back soon, with the Mary Joy Diana theory as a strategically advantageous guidance. In addition to the previous combat experience with so many women, right now, Song Qingshu's method of seduction was very powerful. Not long after, Schwanger's beautiful hair was disheveled. She was panting tenderly again and again. Song Qingshu was no longer satisfied with superficial contact. His hands quietly reached inside her clothes and pushed outwards. Schwanger immediately looked like a tender bamboo shoot that had its shell peeled, revealing her snow-white, fragrant shoulder. Feeling the coolness in the air, Schwanger was momentarily sober. Her voice carried a trace of sobbing tone. Why hasn't Tao Hong and Liu Lu come back after so long? Who knows? Song Qingshu smiled slightly and kissed her. Did you collude with them? With difficulty, Schwanger used her hands to push Song Qingshu away, her burning gaze staring into his eyes. Song Qingshu struggled in his heart for a long time, but in the end he was still unwilling to lie to her, so he bitterly nodded his head. Previously, I used secret sound transmission to tell them to go inside the building and not to come back until I call them. These two girls sold me out just like that? Schwanger looked at him incredulously. I'm afraid so, Song Qingshu said with a bitter smile. Since Schwanger had already regained her rationality, perhaps he wouldn't be able to take advantage of her. Moreover, after today's matter, just thinking about how to deal with the relationship between the two of them in the future, he felt a headache. How about we continue? Song Qingshu held the mentality of making a desperate attempt, foolishly asked. Schwanger lowered her head. Her face couldn't be seen clearly. Song Qingshu only vaguely heard a few words. Carry me to the bed. What? Song Qingshu looked at her in disbelief. Schwanger raised her head, her face flushed, her pearly white teeth biting her lips. She repeated, I said carry me to the bed. I don't like here. Seeing Song Qingshu sitting there in a daze, she unhappily said, If you didn't hear me clearly, I'm going to regret it. I heard you clearly. I heard you clearly, Song Qingshu said in ecstasy. He picked her up and walked to the bedside. After saying that, Schwanger buried her face in Song Qingshu's chest, not willing to make another sound. Song Qingshu only felt that the beauty in his arms seemed to melt all over. When he completely undid her clothes and reached out to touch her thighs, he received even more confirmation. Good Schwanger, I'm coming. Song Qingshu's waist sank all the way in without any sense of ambiguity. This kind of spiritual exchange made the two of them involuntarily agree at the same time. The matter between a man and a woman was exceptionally marvelous. Sometimes the deepest impression was the few seconds of trembling. Sometimes the deepest impression was the pleasure of galloping on the other's delicate body. But sometimes the moment of entering was the most pleasurable. After several years, perhaps they would no longer remember the specific process or the released passion, but the wonderful feeling of entering in that instant or the feeling of spiritual satisfaction could be remembered for a lifetime. Song Qingshu dared to conclude that perhaps he would never forget this intimate moment with Schwanger for the rest of his life. Seeing Schwanger's slightly furrowed brows, as if she was in pain, Song Qingshu quickly realized something was wrong. With a strange expression on his face, he suddenly asked, You are still a virgin? Shuang angrily punched him. If I really had skin contact with Xiaobao, how could I let you near my body? It's entering, not near, Song Qingshu corrected, unable to suppress the joy on his face. Even if it was a woman, if they were not sufficiently aroused, they would not be able to directly penetrate the root of the problem, let alone a virgin. Shuang could be instantly driven in by him. It could be seen that at that time, she was already extremely aroused. Realizing this, Song Qingshu's movements became especially tender. Big brother Song, the first time I saw you, I knew you did not have good intentions towards me. A rosy flush appeared on Shuang's skin, exceptionally enchanting. Shuang, the first time I saw you, I couldn't help but imagine this scene. Now that my dream has come true, I'm really too happy. Song Qingshu sighed emotionally. I knew you were a pervert, Shuang spat. As the saying goes, when drunk, one speaks the truth. That night, when you were drunk, you kept leaning on me and taking advantage of me. I knew you weren't a good person. That night, I actually pretended to be drunk. Song Qingshu laughed mischievously. You bastard. Shuang was so angry that she bit him. In the end, she said embarrassedly, Actually, I know. It seems like our hearts really are connected, sighed Song Qingshu. As if to go along with the word connected, Shuang's head was almost bumped against the edge of the bed by Song Qingshu. She had no choice but to punch him in protest. Chapter 254. As Song Qingshu caressed the fair and tender skin of the beauty under him, he exclaimed in admiration, I just want to steal your white suet jade. Don't say any more. Shuang was so shy that she closed her eyes. Her arms naturally wrapped around Song Qingshu's head. Following his movements, her brows were sometimes tightly furrowed and sometimes relaxed. Don't do this kind of shameful posture. After an unknown amount of time, a delicate and gentle voice of protest came from the bed. Good Shuang, this is necessary for practicing martial arts. Cooperate with me, okay? Song Qingshu promptly coaxed her. What kind of martial art is this? This is so vulgar. Shuang bit her lower lip tightly, but seeing Song Qingshu's serious appearance, she had no choice but to let him do as he pleased. After the clouds dispersed and the rain cleared, Shuang was like a kitten curled up in Song Qingshu's embrace, rubbing the smooth and tender skin on Shuang's back. Song Qingshu only felt exceptionally satisfied. Thinking of the abundant, pure yin energy in her body, Song Qingshu wanted to say something several times, but he hesitated. As if she sensed his doubt, Shuang smiled sweetly. Song Dage, what do you want to ask? Shuang, aren't you and Xiaobao already married? How come you're still a virgin? Song Qingshu carefully chose his words. That's because Xiaobao likes. First wife. First wife calls me that. And then he instructs the next wife in the fu to also call me madam. We haven't formally performed the wedding ceremony. Shuang faintly sighed. In my heart, I've already tacitly acknowledged that I'm Xiaobao's woman, so I also like him to call me that. Song Qingshu remembered that the two of them seemed to be quite intimate before. He suddenly felt strange and said, I know Xiaobao's way of doing things very well. How could he be like Luxiaoyi and not touch such an attractive woman? Shuang blushed, feeling a bit ticklish. She wiggled her waist a bit, distancing herself from him a bit before she finally said, Naturally, Xiaobao is not some upright gentleman. Song Dage, you also know Xiaobao's status in Tiandi Hui, but as his official position in the imperial court grew higher and higher, I was worried that he would become engrossed in it and forget his true nature. Therefore, I made an agreement with him that as long as he returned to live in seclusion in the mountain, I would let him get close to... Suddenly, she remembered Song Qingshu's previous joke. She hastily corrected herself. That's why I let him touch me. Who knew? Who knew? Song Qingshu saw the sadness on her face, so he reached out and hugged her. He deliberately teased her. Who knew that I would be the one to benefit in the end? Shuang fiercely punched him several times in protest. Suddenly, with melancholy, she said, Song Dage, can you promise me one thing? Let alone one thing. Even if it's 1,000 things, I will agree. Song Qingshu fiddled with her delicate earlobe as he spoke with deep emotion. Today's matter, let's just pretend that it never happened. Let's still maintain our previous relationship, all right? Shuang opened her eyes wide, looking at him with hope. What? Song Qingshu's heart turned cold. Although Xiaobao and I are not husband and wife, we are husband and wife in name. It hasn't been long since he passed away. If I get together with another man, how would the people of the world look at me? How would they look at you? More importantly, Xiaobao would be ridiculed by others. I know he is a man who cares about his face the most. If everyone knew that his wife cheated on him, a man, I am afraid he would not have peace in the underworld. Shuang sighed faintly. What cheated on a man? That's too unpleasant to hear. Song Qingshu hugged her tightly, as if he would lose her if he let go. I have been lingering here all this time. The capital has long been filled with rumors and slanders. What are you afraid of? This is different, Song Dage. Shuang finger playfully drew circles on Song Qingshu's chest. Those rumors and slanders can only deceive those who don't know. In the eyes of those who are observant, you have always been protecting me because of the brotherly love of the past. When Xiaobao's friends in the past all gave up, you were the only one who did not abandon me. This was originally an act of being supremely righteous, but if your relationship with me was exposed, you would suddenly become the target of everyone's criticism. Shuang you are thinking of me, aren't you? Song Qingshu was silent for a moment, looking at her with excitement. Don't be so smug. Shuang face was hot as she said unnaturally, I'm just thinking of myself and Xiaobao. Thinking of the etiquette of the secular world, Song Qingshu felt a bit stuffy in his chest. He didn't care about these things, but Shuang, since you're thinking of me so much, I can't be so selfish and disregard your reputation. All right, as you said, let's pretend today's matter never happened and return to how it was before. Even hide it from Tao Hong and Liu Lu. Shuang hurriedly added, how can you say it so lightly? My heart is about to die from the pain. No, I'm afraid I won't be able to enjoy your gentleness in the future. Today, I will enjoy it all at once. Song Qingshu turned over and pressed down. Shuang subconsciously resisted and said with a flushed face, I didn't say I would cut off contact with you. You can secretly come to find me. Song Qingshu was stunned, but a surprised smile quickly floated on his face. As long as I want it, you will get it to me? Shuang shyly emphasized, as long as no one else knows, there's plenty of time in the future. Today, I'll let you go. When he mentioned a certain word, Song Qingshu said meaningfully. Unexpectedly, Shuang hand pressed down on his waist, her cheeks crimson. You've already come in, and you still say this kind of nonsense. Even though only men have it, Shuang this virgin girl, tasted the pleasures of the boudoir for the first time. She also somewhat yearned for more after tasting the marrow. Song Qingshu smiled proudly and began to move gently again. When Song Qingshu helped Shuang put on her clothes, he looked at her special underwear and asked, Shuang what is embroidered on this? Looking at the treasure map of the 42-chapter sutra, Shuang struggled for a long time in her heart, wondering whether she should tell Song Qingshu the truth. Later on, she changed her mind. She had even given her body to him. What else could she not trust? Thus, she told him the origin of the treasure map in its entirety. Song Qingshu was moved in his heart. He thought she would find an excuse to evade him. He did not expect that she actually did not hold back at all. Shuang, such an important matter. You actually told me. Isn't it because I saw that you have dealings with Tian Di Hui? Moreover, it's obvious that your heart is not in the Tatar officialdom. I won't tell you. Besides, I have given my body to you. Naturally, I won't hold anything back from you. Shuang snorted delicately. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. Shuang's wholehearted trust made him feel exceptionally heavy. He said hesitantly, if in the future you find out that I lied to you about something, what would you think? As long as you don't present this treasure to Kangxi as a stepping stone to advance yourself, or embezzle it for your own personal gain, I won't blame you, Shuang said with a smile. You lied to me. Naturally, you have your reasons. I believe you. You're truly worthy of being the perfect wife. Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded. But I really lied to you about something. Shuang-er looked at him with a suspicious expression on her face. Suddenly, she thought of something and shyly buried her head in his bosom. Song Dage, she said, I know that in order to obtain me, you must have played some tricks, but it doesn't matter, I won't blame you. Song Qing-shu gazed deeply at the beautiful woman in his bosom. He could not help hugging her tightly. Glistening tears appeared in his eyes. My good Shuang-er. At the same time, he made up his mind that he must hide Wei Xiaobao's matter from her for the rest of his life. While helping her tidy up her clothes, Song Qing-shu said, Shuang-er, I also know the secret of the 42-chapter sutra. The dragon vein is illusory, but the treasure is real. I am planning to use this treasure as the future army's military supplies. Thereupon, Song Qing-shu revealed some of his plans to her. Hearing this, Shuang-er's beautiful eyes lit up again and again. She happily said, I really did not misjudge you. I knew that a great hero like Song Dage would not be willing to be the Tartars' running dog. As she spoke, she became worried. But this map is still missing some key information. Song Qing-shu's expression was strange. The other 2 copies of the 42-chapter sutra are in my hands. He briefly explained the origin of the sutra, and then said, Next time I will bring the sutra to you, and you can find an opportunity to complete the map. The 42-chapter sutra could be said to be the object that many forces fought over, and Shuang was very clear about this. Seeing that Song Qing-shu was ready to give the sutra to her without any precaution, she could not help but feel a trace of warmth in her heart. But right now the most urgent matter is how to rescue you from the musical house. Song Qing-shu changed the topic of discussion. Song Dage, your identity in the officialdom is beneficial for your future actions, so you must not invite trouble to yourself in order to save me. In any case, with you secretly protecting me, this musical house is not a terrible place, Shuang said bashfully. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, I can't always let you stay in this filthy place. I've already thought of a way. Thought of a way? Shuang was stunned. She was personally demoted to the musical house by Kangxi, and in her view, there was no other way but to go far away. Thanks to Shuang-er's wonderful body just now, when the spirit and desire blended, I thought of it. Song Qing-shu shamelessly moved closer. Song Dage, I have always thought that you are a gentleman, but who knew that you are even more glib than Xiaobao? When it comes to frivolous words, I am afraid that even Xiaobao cannot compare to you. Shuang said snappily. Is my mouth very glib and glib? Have a taste. Shuang laughed and hurriedly dodged. The 2 played for a while, and then there was a knock on the door. Master Song, madam, can we come in? It's Tao Hong and Liu Lu. Shuang hurriedly tidied up her clothes and hair, glanced at Song Qing-shu, and said, Whisper, we have an appointment. I remember. Song Qing-shu hurriedly nodded and suddenly sat a few feet away from her. When the 2 maids came in, they looked at Song Qing-shu and then looked at Shuang. Seeing that the 2 were chatting as usual, they felt that it was extremely inconceivable. Madam, have you been sitting and chatting like this? Tao Hong was more courageous and asked after putting down the wine and dishes. What else do you think? Shuang hated these 2 maids who betrayed their master for glory. You went to prepare the wine and dishes. Why did it take so long? The 2 maids smiled and prevaricated. When they refilled Song Qing-shu's wine, they whispered in his ear, Master Song, you are wasting the opportunity. No hurry, no hurry. Song Qing-shu picked up the wine cup, took a sip, and said leisurely. Song Qing-shu had already stolen the forbidden fruit, so his mind was naturally not on the wine and dishes. Before long, he said goodbye to Shuang. Shuang was also scared by the suspicious eyes of the 2 maids and couldn't wait for him to leave as soon as possible. Chapter 255. After arriving at the Forbidden City, Song Qing-shu asked the eunuch to pass on the message and waited outside the cunning palace. After a long time, there was no news. Song Qing-shu thought that Empress Tong didn't want to see him and was about to turn around and leave. "Your Excellency Song, please wait. Her Majesty invites you in." At this time, the eunuch ran out and shouted. Song Qing-shu was stunned and suddenly realized that Empress Tong was trying to undermine his prestige. He would have a good time later. After entering the cunning palace, as Song Qing-shu expected, Empress Tong looked at him with a cold face and said nothing. Although Song Qing-shu was already Kangshi's confidant, he had always been outside, so this was the first time he saw Empress Tong's real face. Song Qing-shu glanced at Empress Tong secretly and saw that she was wearing a fiery red dress with a phoenix pattern embroidered with golden silk thread on the collar and golden, auspicious clouds on the skirt. The phoenix in the middle of the cloud bun had a pearl in its mouth. The tassels under the pearl hung down gently, making her pretty face extremely beautiful. Song Qing-shu secretly felt pity. This Empress Tong looked 60 to 70% similar to Guan Jilin in the future. Was this considered intergenerational inheritance? However, her face was cold, and she always tried to show the majesty of the Empress. It was destined that she lacked the innate charm of Guan Jilin. "I wonder what Commander Song wants to see me for." Empress Tong took a sip of the tea and didn't look at him directly. Looking at the long cloisonné finger glove on Empress Tong's fingers, Song Qing-shu felt unhappy. This phenomenon was also common among the nobles in the Qing dynasty. He used to secretly ask Dolong and learned that long nails were a symbol of status, showing that they didn't need to work. The cloisonné finger glove was used to protect long nails. Song Qing-shu, who came from the modern era, couldn't really understand this strange aesthetic concept. He always felt that they looked like goblins. The goblins here naturally referred to those horrible goblins in ghost stories, not those charming female goblins in Liaozhai. What a waste of such a beautiful body. Song Qing-shu sighed to himself. "I'm asking you a question," Empress Tong said angrily when she saw Song Qing-shu standing there silently. "Nyang Nyang should know why this lowly official is looking for Nyang Nyang." Song Qing-shu replied calmly. "Song Qing-shu, how dare you?" Empress Tong raised her eyebrows, sat up straight, and stared at Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu looked at her without a word. Empress Tong held her breath. She waved her hand and said to the eunuchs and maids, "You can leave now. Cha." Looking at the eunuchs and palace maids walking out one after another, Song Qing-shu laughed and said, "Nyang Nyang's courage is indeed not small. Could it be that you are not afraid I have ulterior motives toward you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he somewhat regretted it. He was used to teasing Shuang. When he talked, he did not know how to control the weight of his words. Hearing his words, Empress Tong was obviously stunned. Obviously, she didn't expect the servant in front of her to be so bold. She snorted, "Do you know that as long as I tell His Majesty about your words, as long as I tell His Majesty? Otherwise, would you have to bear the consequences?" Song Qing-shu was shocked. He knew the mentality of these people in power. Kneeling down and begging for mercy was useless. Now that things had come to this, she could only brace herself and continue. "Your Highness naturally wouldn't trouble your Majesty with such a small matter, lest it would appear that your Highness doesn't know what's important. Are you threatening me?" Empress Tong knew that with her identity, as long as she scared these officials, they would beg for mercy verbally. She didn't expect that Song Qing-shu would make a move against common sense. In fact, she was very clear that she was not one of those newly favored concubines who acted recklessly, but the mother of the imperial harem. She couldn't wait to help the emperor solve his troubles, so naturally, she couldn't bother him with this kind of thing. This subject doesn't dare. Song Qing-shu respectfully returned the greeting. Empress Tong nodded with satisfaction and suddenly said with a faint smile, "Recently, people in the capital say that Commander Song is very lucky with women. You have been lingering in the boudoir of the family of the Sinnerwei Xiaobao for a long time." Song Qing-shu didn't wait for her to finish and immediately interrupted her. "This is just the malicious slander of the common people. Madame Wei and I are innocent, and heaven and earth can prove it. The reason why we have been lingering in the musical house is just to guard against thieves and rascals. As a member of the Tong family, Empress Tong naturally knew the purpose of his staying in the musical house. She didn't really think that there was anything between Song Qing-shu and Shuang Er. After all, at their level, they could have any woman they wanted. For a woman, it was really incomprehensible for him to ruin his reputation. But when she heard Song Qingshu's words, she couldn't help but frown and say, "Who are you talking about?" "Your Majesty, why do you ask when you already know the answer?" Song Qingshu smiled. Of course, he wouldn't be so stupid to say the name of Ilundai. After all, he was Empress Tong's cousin. "You are really different from the ordinary officials." Empress Tong was stunned and said, as if she was talking to herself, "When the ordinary officials come to the Cunning Palace and see me, they all tremble with fear. They don't want to do nothing but to not make mistakes. They can't talk and laugh as freely as you." Suddenly, she changed the topic, stared at Song Qing-shu, and asked, "As a Han, Commander Song doesn't want to stay in our Qing dynasty for a long time, right?" Song Qing-shu secretly raised his vigilance. He didn't expect that she could see through his mind with just a few words. It seemed that Empress Tong was not as beautiful as she looked. He quickly cheered up and responded, "Your Majesty, you must be joking. As a traitor of one of the top sects in the Central Plains, I have long been hated by everyone. Fortunately, Your Majesty did not care about the past, and not only took Song Mao in, but also entrusted me with an important task. With such a great favor, Song Mao can hardly protect himself in this life, so how dare I have other thoughts?" Seeing Song Qingshu's fear and trepidation, Empress Tong nodded with satisfaction, but the trace of curiosity she just had about him disappeared immediately. She said in a cold voice, "I know your purpose of coming here, but what Wei Xiaobao said in the past is suspected of insulting my grandfather and uncle, so he deserves this retribution. If you're here to plead for mercy for his family, you don't have to say anything." Song Qingshu secretly became angry. For a long time, he had been in the hands of the beautiful sisters with similar appearances but different personalities. She was like a chess piece in Kangxi's hand, but wasn't Kangxi also a chess piece in his hand? Although Lady Tongjia was the empress, there were so many heroes in the world that the empress and Wang Fei were simply too many to count. He really didn't care about them. Suppressing his anger, he lightly said, "Since that's the case, I won't disturb your highness's rest." Finishing, he turned and left, leaving Empress Tong stunned on the spot. Not long after he left, he almost bumped into a beautiful woman in palace dress. He looked up and saw it was Xiao Tong. He quickly apologized. "I almost bumped into Imperial Consort Yang Yang. I hope your Majesty can forgive me." Xiao Tong took a step back, a blush appearing on her pretty face. She said in surprise, "So it's you. You also came to see Jijia?" "Yes." Song Qingshu nodded grumpily. Because of Ilundai and Empress Tong, he even disliked Empress Xiao Tong. Noticing his expression, Empress Xiao Tong wasn't angry. She asked softly, "Did you have something to ask of Jijia and she didn't agree?" Song Qingshu was startled. Looking at this dignified young imperial consort with a trace of innocence in front of him, he unconsciously nodded. In Song Qingshu's view, Empress Xiao Tong wasn't as worldly as her sister. Perhaps he could make use of her sympathy. So he briefly told her about Shuang Er's matter. "I've heard about Shuang Er, Jijia's matter. I also think it's a bit excessive. No matter what, she shouldn't be involved in a grudge between the Tong household and Wei Xiaobao. But don't blame Jijia. She values the Tong family's honor more than anything else. Naturally, she won't be nice to you." Empress Xiao Tong pursed her lips and smiled. "Leave this matter to me. I'll handle it." "That's right. It's naturally more convenient for you sisters to talk." Only then did Song Qingshu have the time to carefully look at her appearance. She was very similar to her sister, but her face was more delicate. F***CK, there are two Guanjilin. Kangxi is not afraid of dying of exhaustion in bed. Song Qingshu cursed in his heart. Although Empress Xiao Tong noticed his strange expression, she didn't know the dirty thoughts in his heart. She shook her head and said, "This matter can't be explained to my sister. I'll find a chance to talk to His Majesty. As long as His Majesty agrees, Shuang Er will naturally be fine." I wonder when Her Majesty can talk to His Majesty? Song Qingshu also knew that his question was very rude, but under such circumstances, he couldn't care so much. Her Majesty should know that a place like the musical house is completely a devil's nest for women. What's more, that cousin of yours has always been there. Hee hee. Empress Xiao Tong naturally knew what her cousin Alundi had done, but she didn't expect that Song Qingshu would be so persistent. She looked around and saw that all the eunuchs and palace maids were far away from her. Then she whispered, "His Majesty has told me before that tonight he will flip my card." After saying that, her ears turned a little red. After saying that, she rushed into the room to find her sister. Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that Empress Xiao Tong would reveal such a secret to him. He didn't know whether she was too shrewd or born to be a fool. Chapter 254. The sisters with similar appearances but different characters. The emperor's flipping card system in ancient times was to prevent the emperor from favoring only one concubine, so that all the concubines in the harem could enjoy the same benefits. But in practice, it was often not so fair. The emperor always had a woman he particularly loved. Sometimes he just needed to give a hint, and the personal eunuchs were not fools, so they naturally understood the emperor's meaning. Then, they could make the emperor flip the card to the concubine he wanted. For example, every card had the same person written on it. The honor and favor in the harem is really unpredictable. Some time ago, Kangxi favored concubine me the most. How did it suddenly become Empress Xiao Tong? Song Qingshu shook his head, dispelled the thoughts in his mind, and strode out of the imperial palace. Now, he could only wait for the news from Empress Xiao Tong. That night, in Jingren Palace, Kangxi heard what Empress Xiao Tong said and couldn't help but frown and ask, "You don't have to worry about this kind of thing." Empress Xiao Tong said softly, "Your Majesty, I don't want to worry about it. I just think that Your Majesty's handling of this matter is quite inappropriate." Chapter 256. Empress Tong shook her head and softly said, "Song Qingshu went to beg my sister about this matter, and I happened to bump into him outside the door, but he didn't have the guts to ask me to find Your Majesty. These words are just something I thought about and felt it was necessary to remind Your Majesty." "What do you want to say? Speak." Kangxi's spirits rose a bit. "Dare I ask Your Majesty, in the world today, who is worthy of being your opponent?" Empress Tong turned her head and looked at Kangxi. Kangxi frowned and thought for a moment. Speaking of opponents, naturally only the Mongolian Khan Temujin can be considered a serious threat. The other countries are merely struggling at death's door. That is correct. Right now, the Mongolian army is vast. If Your Majesty wants to defeat Temujin, you must gather all the talents in the world. Seeing that Kangxi was deep in thought, Empress Tong continued, "Song Qingshu is naturally not much, but Wei Xiaobao is very important. Your Majesty is very knowledgeable and must know the story of the Han people spending 1,000 gold to buy a horse's bones." Kangxi nodded. "Continue." Empress Tong smiled and said, "Wei Xiaobao embezzled 1,000,000 taels of silver. If it were any other time, he would naturally deserve to die 10,000 times over. But right now, Your Majesty is in urgent need of talented people. If you punish Wei Xiaobao because of this, thinking back to how Your Majesty valued him in the past, now that he is dead like a lamp going out, if the Han people who don't know the truth find out about this, I'm afraid they will be bitterly disappointed and give up any thoughts of relying on the court. That will be a loss that outweighs the gain." Kangxi's expression was uncertain. After a while, he put his arm around Empress Tong's fragrant shoulder and said happily, "If not for your reminder, we would have ruined our great plan. We had planned to use this opportunity to lure out the traitors of Tian Di Hui and catch them all in one fell swoop. Who would have thought that after so long, there would be no news from Tian Di Hui? If not for the advice of Imperial Concubine, we would have ruined our great plan. Little Tong, you are our Empress Zhang's son." Seeing that Kangxi was comparing himself to the virtuous Empress Zhang's son Guanyin, Empress Tong's face blushed. Somewhat embarrassed, she said, "Everything I say is for your majesty's sake. As an imperial concubine, I absolutely cannot compare to Empress Zhang's son. I only hope that your majesty can be like Li Shimin and become the heavenly Khan in the hearts of all the races." This sentence just happened to scratch the itch in Kangshi's heart. He could not help but burst out laughing and hugged Empress Xiaotong. Right now your Jiejie is the Empress. Naturally, you cannot fight with her. When the time is right in the future, Jin will confer another Empress. What's the big deal? Meanwhile, when Song Qingshu returned to his residence, he happened to bump into Nan Lan. He couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. "I haven't seen you for a long time. Madam, you've lost weight." Nan Lan's slightly pale cheeks were flushed, and she said with a strange expression, "I heard that you're always in love with Miss Shuang of the musical house, so how could you have the time to care about outsiders like us?" Hearing this, Song Qingshu was taken aback. He quickly reacted and asked mischievously, "Lanner, are you jealous?" Nan Lan's whole body trembled slightly. She looked around stealthily, bit her lip, and said, "I hope Lord Song can conduct himself with dignity." If these words were heard by the servants, it would be hard to avoid them from gossiping. The root of the tongue. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I don't want to lose my beautiful and charming madam." Seeing Nan Lan's expression change slightly, he quickly changed the topic and asked, "How is Brother Tian's health now?" A trace of distress appeared on Nan Lan's face. After this period of recuperation, Gui Nong's injury is almost healed, but I'm afraid that he can't have sex in the future. As she spoke, she suddenly realized something and immediately stopped talking. Her whole body stayed where she was, and her expression was exceptionally bashful. Song Qingshu revealed a trace of a smile. He moved closer to her ear and said, "Madam, don't worry. Brother Tian can't have sex, but I'm willing to do everything I can for him. I guarantee that I can relieve Madam's pain of longing." After he finished speaking, he left Nan Lan, who was stunned on the spot, and laughed. Looking at Song Qingshu's back, Nan Lan's pretty face alternated between green and white. Obviously, her mind was in a mess. Although she was extremely angry, she couldn't raise a trace of hatred. Realizing this, Nan Lan couldn't help but be at a loss. Now that he was concerned about Shuang, Song Qingshu naturally wasn't in the mood to have an affair at night. After returning to his room, he closed his eyes and sat cross-legged, adjusting the internal energy in his body. Although he had lost half of his internal energy in order to save Zhu Xiaoxiao, after being nourished by Shuang, rich pure yin energy, Song Qingshu felt that his internal energy had recovered quite a bit. He couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. At the same time, a trace of doubt arose in his heart. The joyous Zen technique is such a fast and incomparably erotic technique. Why did all the predecessors end up dead? For thousands of years, those who practiced the joyous Zen technique were all outstanding people with unswerving willpower. But in the end, they all ended up miserably. Could it be that there was another reason? At present, Song Qingshu's internal energy had not reached that level yet. Naturally, he couldn't understand the troubles of that realm for the time being. In a few years' time, whether or not Song Qingshu would like the joyous Zen technique was hard to say. Early the next morning, Kangxi summoned Song Qingshu and he hurried to the imperial study. Seeing him, Kangxi was expressionless. He asked indifferently, "Regarding the matter of Wei Xiaobao's widow, does beloved subject Song have any objection to Zhen's way of doing things?" Song Qingshu was taken aback, but very quickly he came to his senses. Perhaps it was because of Xiao Tong last night. He didn't expect that although she looked kind and innocent on the surface, she actually had a way to persuade Kangxi. Hastily suppressing the joy in his heart, he said without leaving any trace, "Your Majesty must have your Majesty's reason for doing this. Subordinate is only following orders, that's all." Hearing this, Kangxi laughed aloud. While sipping his tea, he cast a glance at him and said, "Is that so?" Jin heard that beloved subject Song is fighting fiercely with Elundai for the sake of Wei Xiaobao's widow. Song Qingshu sternly said, Obeying your majesty's order is one thing. Doing my best to protect my old friend's family is another. There is no conflict between the two. Before he could finish, Kangxi clapped his hands and said with a laugh, Wei Xiaobao can have a brother like you. He can die without regret. The reason why Zhan issued that kind of order before was merely to lure Tiandi Hui rebels out. I didn't expect that after so long. Unexpectedly, they didn't have the least bit of reaction. Humph, what righteousness comes first? In Zhan's opinion, they're nothing more than a group of people who seek after the rich and powerful, who are greedy for life and afraid of death. Song Qingshu thought that it was indeed so. Fortunately, he and Shuang had secretly sent people to inform Tian Di Hui people, telling them to bide their time. Zhan also didn't expect that after so long, Tian Di Hui unexpectedly did not have the least bit of movement. Kangxi muttered to himself irresolutely for a moment before continuing. In the past, Wei Xiaobao has rendered great merit to the imperial court. Zhen cannot let him die with remaining grievance. Beloved subject Song. Originally, Zhen could directly order the restoration of Xiaobao's former honor. It's just that considering your loyalty and devotion all along, Zhen is planning to fulfill the name of your loyalty and righteousness. Listening to this, Song Qingshu was baffled. Kangxi said, How about this? In a moment during the morning court assembly, you directly submit a memorial asking Zhen to reconsider this matter. Zhen will pretend to give you face and pardon Xiaobao and his family. What do you think? As soon as Song Qingshu heard this, he suppressed the joy in his heart and hastily said, Your Majesty is wise. But in his heart he was muttering to himself, How could Kangxi be so kind? Although he came from a modern era, although he did not lack in intelligence and wisdom, his experience in political struggle was still lacking. Naturally, he could not see that Kangxi wanted to use this opportunity to show the heroes of the world that he was broad-minded from all rivers running into the sea, while conveniently buying a favor from Song Qingshu. If it was any other high-ranking minister who received this kind of courtesy, perhaps they would shed tears of gratitude early on. They would be loyal and devoted. But how could Kangxi know Song Qingshu's ambition? Naturally, all this effort to buy people's heart would go down the drain. Based on Song Qingshu's status, although his real power was not small, nominally he was not qualified to participate in the morning court assembly. However, with Kangxi's special permission, naturally he had a seat. Not long after the morning court assembly, as agreed, Song Qingshu submitted the memorial to the throne. Before Tong family had time to react, Kangxi had tacitly nodded his head, which one of the people in the imperial court was not a shrewd person. Before they let Tong family go, it was only because Kangxi's attitude was ambiguous. Obviously, he was deliberately indulging them. Seeing the emperor's attitude, Wei Xiaobao's former good friends, Prince Kong Jieshu, Shangshu Songgoto, Ming Zhu, and the others, one after another, put forward their opinions. Tong family saw the direction of the wind was not in their favor. Plus, they had almost vented their anger recently. They also expressed their desire to ask Kangxi to show mercy. Only then did Kangxi seize the opportunity to push the boat forward. He pardoned Shuang and the others of their crimes, but he only dealt with the already dead Wei Xiaobao without any pain or itch. After the morning court assembly, Wei Xiaobao's former friends, Jieshu, Songgo Tu, and the others, one after another, tried to curry favor with Song Qingshu, praising his recent righteous deed. On the surface, Song Qingshu appeared to be perfunctory, but inwardly he was somewhat dumbstruck. In just one day's time, he had changed from the capital's famous debauchee who lingered in the brothels to someone who did not fear power in order to save his old friend's widow. In that instant, he realized that right or wrong was not the key. Everything still depended on Kangxi's attitude. Song Qingshu shouldered the responsibility of guarding the imperial palace. Not long after he bid farewell to Prince Kong and Songgo Tu, he went to patrol the inner palace. As luck would have it, he bumped into the bright and beautiful Empress Tong in the imperial garden. Empress Tong and her older sister really looked too alike, but it was very easy to tell them apart. They had the same appearance, not to mention the difference in clothing, Empress Tong always had a straight face, maintaining her dignity as the mother of the imperial harem. Empress Tong was different, although she also deliberately paid attention to her words and actions. Unintentionally, she still revealed a young girl's kindness and innocence. Song Qing-shu, the deputy director of the imperial bodyguard, pays respect to imperial concubine Yang Yang. Song Qing-shu bowed and said, "Your Excellency Song, you may dispense with the formalities," Empress Tong said in a slightly hurried manner as she raised her hand. Because there were palace maids and eunuchs everywhere, Song Qing-shu naturally could not talk to her too much, so he quietly waited to the side. When she brushed past him, Song Qing-shu said through secret voice sending, "Thank you." Empress Tong did not expect him to be so bold, and her delicate body could not help but tremble, but she quickly concealed it, nodded slightly, and walked past him without leaving a trace. When Song Qing-shu went to the musical house to read the imperial edict, Taoong and Liu jumped up in surprise, almost hugging and kissing Song Qing-shu and jumping around. Although they were loyal to Shuang, which girl was willing to stay in a place like the musical house for the rest of her life? They had seen everything that Song Qing-shu had done in the past few days, so they said with a double meaning, "In the past, we thought that the most capable man in the world was Lord Wei, but we did not expect that today, Your Excellency Song is as capable as Lord Wei. Madam, don't you think so?" After saying that, they deliberately glanced at Shuang-er. Shuang-er was angry and amused at the same time. She did not know what kind of soup Song Qing-shu had fed these two maids. All day long, whenever there was a chance, he would try to matchmake the two. Although she had already secretly pledged her heart and given her body to Song Qing-shu, she was, after all, a widow. Naturally, she did not dare to let the two maids know everything, so she could only glare at them to express the dissatisfaction in her heart. Although Song Qing-shu found it funny, he naturally did not want to expose all this. Objectively speaking, the current situation was the best. If the relationship between the two was exposed, a good thing would immediately become a bad thing. If someone with ulterior motives impeached him, not to mention the Qing court, perhaps even a world would not tolerate him. My brain is really filled with sperm. I even dare to touch such a bunch of troublesome women. Having said that, looking at Shuang-er's shy expression, Song Qing-shu thought that if he was given another chance, he would still push her down without hesitation. As a man in the world, if he could not even have sex with the woman he loved, then what was the point of living? The great Khan of Mongolia, Temujin, once said, "The greatest joy in life is to defeat the enemy, chase the enemy away, seize what they have, see the person closest to them with tears, ride their horses, and take their wives and daughters." Song Qing-shu asked himself if this was in line with his own values. But Gu Long's words, "Ride the fastest horse, drink the strongest wine, and play with the most beautiful woman," were quite good. Chapter 257. Sister Fong, I'm so happy to see that you're okay. Shuang-er ran forward in surprise and held Fong Yi's arms. "Miss Fong, how did you escape from the prison of Yingtian Prefecture?" Song Qing-shu also breathed a sigh of relief. "I wanted to save you before, but you disappeared. Is that so?" Fong Yi lightly replied. "It was Mu Palace's people who rescued me." Shuang-er was happy to hear this. The heroes of Mu Palace also came. The situation in the capital has been tense recently. The young prince and the others took advantage of the chaos to leave the city after saving me. Fong Yi said a little unnaturally. But Shuang-er and Song Qing-shu were happy that she was safe and sound, so they didn't notice these details. Song Qing-shu took them to the mansion and settled them down, then left. After all, the matter between him and Shuang-er couldn't be exposed. Returning to the stick, he summoned Zhang Qingyan and Zhao Qixin. "Brothers, I have a favor to ask of you." Zhang and Zhao patted their chests and said in unison, "We haven't done anything since we arrived at the stick, so we're feeling uneasy. Please tell us, Darren Song. You're too polite. We're both Imperial Guards, and we've gone through fire and water many times." Song Qing-shu chatted with the two for a while. then said, "Brother, I want to ask you to investigate the traces of a Jianghu person." The two looked at each other and were happy. They weren't very good at fighting, but it wasn't too difficult to investigate a person, so they said confidently, "Don't worry, as long as this person is still active in Jianghu, we'll definitely find her." Song Qingshu nodded and said with satisfaction, "This person is also very famous in Jianghu. It shouldn't be difficult for you to find her traces." "May I ask, Darren, what is this person's name?" Zhao Qixin asked, secretly wondering if this person was Song Qingshu's archenemy. "Her name is Li Macho. She also has a nickname, Scarlet Serpent Fairy," Song Qingshu replied. Zhang Kanyan nodded slightly. He seemed to have heard of this name in his memory. He quickly asked, "Is she a friend of Lord Song, or what does that have to do with anything?" Song Qingshu was at a loss. "If she's my lord's friend, we'll naturally treat her with respect. If she's my lord's enemy, haha, we won't care so much. We'll directly capture her and bring her to my lord." Zhang Kanyan laughed awkwardly. Song Qingshu frowned, thinking that this Manchurian official really would not let go of any opportunity to flatter him. He shook his head and said, "I just want you to find her whereabouts. When the time comes, I'll personally contact her. This person is highly skilled in martial arts, and he kills without blinking an eye. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. So don't act rashly after you've investigated him." The Dark Fourth Bureau was in urgent need of manpower, but because the Manchurian Qing had destroyed the great Ming dynasty, their reputation in Jianghu was not very good. Those who were willing to submit to the imperial court were usually not very capable, so Song Qingshu naturally looked down on them. But in Jianghu, there were some demons who were notorious for various reasons and had a lot of enemies, but there was a slight possibility of recruiting them. The Dark Fourth Bureau was in its early stages, so it didn't care so much. Whether it was a white cat or a black cat, as long as it could catch mice, it was a good cat. Song Qingshu had his eyes on this group of people, so he sent Zhang and Zhao to secretly investigate their whereabouts. Other than Li Macho, Song Qingshu also told them to keep an eye on Dingbu San, Dingbu Si, and the others. One kills no more than 3 times a day, and the other kills no more than 4 times a day. Zhao Qixin clicked his tongue in wonder. These Jianghu people are indeed extremely vicious. Zhang Kangyan thought about it more comprehensively. After hesitating for a while, he looked at Song Qingshu and said, "Official Song, you told us to keep an eye on this group of demons in Jianghu. Are you trying to recruit them?" But the Emperor's purpose in establishing the Dark Fourth Bureau is more to investigate information. Speaking of which, isn't it more appropriate for Chief Steward Duo's Flying Guillotine to recruit these people? The Emperor didn't explicitly say that we can't recruit these righteous Jianghu people. Recruiting them will also help us control the intelligence of Jianghu. Song Qingshu stood up, clasped his hand behind his back, and said with a smile, "The two of you should have heard of the Brocade Guard and the East Faction Guards of the former Ming dynasty. The Brocade Guard had a bit of glory in the first few years, but later on, it was completely suppressed by the East Faction Guards. They were obviously of the same level, but later on, when the Brocade Guard saw the people of the East Faction Guards, they trembled with fear and didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Status is earned by oneself." Zhang Kanyan gave a thumbs up, and a flattering smile appeared on his face. Official Song's foresight really makes this subordinate blush with shame. Zhao Qixin also followed suit for a while, and suddenly remembered something. He said, "Official Song, the Emperor sent someone to pass a message to the Dark Fourth Bureau, asking when are you going to leave to carry out his previous orders?" Song Qingshu was startled. He thought that Kangxi was already urging him to go to the Divine Dragon Island. Hastily he nodded and said, "Would Zhao Xiondi please reply to His Majesty that I will leave in a couple of days?" Watching the two of them leaving, Song Qingshu narrowed his eyes. He thought, although Zhang Kengyan and Zhao Qixin, these two fellows, are quick-witted and sensible, they are bannermen. When they think about problems, they will subconsciously consider the imperial court. In the future, it will certainly be inconvenient to use them, but right now the Dark Fourth Bureau does not have many people. I have no choice but to let them take the lead. In fact, Song Qingshu still had another suspicion in his heart. The Dark Fourth Bureau and the Flying Guillotine could be foreseen to become the two most terrifying organizations of the Manchurian Qing in the future. Naturally, Song Qingshu did not doubt Dolong's loyalty. But he was a Han. Kangxi gave the Dark Fourth Bureau to him. It was impossible that he did not have a trick up his sleeve. Zhang Kangyin and Zhao Qixin. These two people coincidentally volunteered to join. Could it be that Kangxi deliberately planted them as spies? Although he was aware of this possibility, Song Qingshu was not nervous at all. As long as he used them well, Zhang and Zhao, two people, could be used by him to pacify Kangxi's suspicious and jealous heart. Song Qingshu did not intend to conceal the matter of recruiting the martial art masters of the evil sects in Jianghu from Kangxi. On the contrary, he wanted to use this opportunity to make Kangxi aware of his own selfish little tricks. Moreover, these little tricks did not touch the bottom line. In history, those great generals who led troops in a battle, such as Wang Jian, or those civil officials who held great power in their hands, such as Xiao He, all of them used all kinds of self-defiling methods to make the emperor feel at ease with them. After all, a tall and sturdy Song Qingshu, who could not see the slightest flaw, was much more frightening to Kangxi than a Song Qingshu, who had a small scheme. During the conversation just now, Song Qingshu wanted to use Zhang Kangyin's mouth to let Kangxi know that his purpose was only to fight for power with the Flying Guillotine. Of course, the private forces that Song Qingshu really wanted to cultivate would not be known by the two people, such as Sang Feihong's Five Lakes sect, the lowly of the king of Medicine Village, and a few female friends of the Five Poison cult. In the future, the people in the Dark Fourth Bureau will definitely be mixed with good and evil, and some of them will need to be controlled. The best method in the world is the life and death talisman of Heavenly Mountain Tonglao. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to get it from that old witch. The three-corpse brain divine pill of the Sun Moon cult is not bad, but it has a bad reputation, and it is in the hands of Dongfang Muxue and Renwushing. Although Dongfang Muxue and I are friends now, it is hard to say what will happen in the future. The leopard tendon-changing pill of the God-Dragon cult sounds much better than the three-corpse brain divine pill. Moreover, I will have a chance to get it if I plan well on this trip to the God-Dragon cult. Song Qingshu pondered for a long time by himself at the stick. Finally, he straightened out the chaotic thoughts in his mind. Watching the curtain of night fall, he revealed a smile, then stood up and walked in the direction of Shuang Er's residence. If Wu Yazi married the Heavenly Mountain Tonglao, Song Qingshu's face suddenly became a little interesting. In just a month, he could play with Lolas, young girls, young married women, and mature women. Speaking of which, Heavenly Mountain Tonglao is really a man's gift, but unfortunately, she is too old. It is really a bit disgusting. While his imagination was running wild, Song Qingshu had unknowingly arrived outside the Viscount mansion. Naturally, he did not dare to enter from the front door, but found a secluded corner, used his qinggong, and lightly sneaked in. Soon, he reached the vicinity of Shuang Er's room. The candlelight inside was flickering, and Shuang Er was chatting with the two girls, Taohong and Liu Lu. These two stinky girls are really a hindrance. Song Qingshu secretly cursed, and suddenly came up with a plan. He used his internal power, suppressed his voice, and carefully transmitted it to Shuang Er's ears in the room. What is there to talk with these two little devils? If you want to chat, I will accompany you. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Shuang Er trembled all over, and her originally pink face suddenly turned red. She coughed softly. Taohong, Lilu, I'm a little tired. I want to sleep. You also quickly go to rest. After saying that, she also cooperated and yawned. Madam, you are so bad. You haven't said what happened between you and Songdarren that day. Taohong pouted discontentedly, turned her head, and looked out of the window. It is still so early. Didn't I say it many times? Nothing happened. Knowing that Song Qingshu was eavesdropping outside, Shuang wished she could sew her mouth shut. These days I've been so worried. Now that I can finally relax, I feel that I can't keep my eyes open. On the side, Liu poked Tao Hong and said, "That's right. Madam has really been worried sick these days. Let's not disturb Madam's rest." Finished speaking, she pulled Tao Hong and excused herself. As soon as the two of them left, Song Qingshu flew in from the window on the side. Under Shuang Er's astonished gaze, he burrowed into her quilt. Carelessly touching her, he felt that there was still a layer of moisture on the beautiful woman's delicate body, and there was also a faint fragrance of flower petals on the tip of his nose. Song Qingshu hugged her and kissed her. Grinning, he said, "You wash yourself fragrant. You knew I was coming." Shuang blushed. She exerted all her strength to pinch his waist and somewhat helplessly sighed. "How can you be so bold? What would you do if someone found out? The pleasure last time made me unable to sleep every night. I really couldn't suppress the pain of lovesickness in my heart. That's why I came to look for you." Before Song Qingshu could finish, a soft hand covered his lips. "Don't mention it." Thinking of what happened that day, Shuang'er's whole body also became somewhat weak. She somewhat angrily said, that time I was soft-hearted. I promised you occasionally, but I didn't let you come every day." Her voice gradually became sobbing. "Good Shuang'er, it's all my fault." Song Qingshu quickly hugged her and coaxed, "Since you don't like it, I'll leave right away." Chapter 258. "Okay." Song Qingshu couldn't have asked for more. Straightforwardly agreed. "You lie down obediently?" "Hey, why are you taking off your clothes?" Shuang'er exclaimed, worried that Tao Hong and Liu outside would be alarmed. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Looking at her green and supple fingers under the candlelight, Song Qingshu couldn't help but stretch out his hand to stroke them. "Madam, what happened?" At this time, Tao Hong's voice came from outside, and from the sound of footsteps, it seemed that she was coming inside. Shuang'er turned pale with fright. If she saw Song Qingshu on her bed, she wouldn't have the face to see anyone. In a moment of desperation, she pressed down on Song Qingshu's head and stuffed him into the quilt. Song Qingshu was quite cooperative. Smelling the fragrance in the quilt, which was like orchid but not orchid, and feeling the heat coming from Shuang Er's delicate body, his mischievous heart rose, and he stretched out his paw. "Nothing, Tao Hong, you go down." Shuang Er tightly grabbed the quilt, nervously looking at Tao Hong, who was standing at the door and lifting the curtain. Suddenly feeling Song Qingshu's movement, her whole body tightened, and she almost cried out, "Yes, madam. If there's anything, just call us." Tao Hong puzzledly looked at Shuang Er's bed, feeling that there was something strange, but since the master ordered her to go down, she couldn't ask anything. Seeing Tao Hong put down the curtain, Shuang Er finally breathed a sigh of relief. Blushing, she pulled the bastard man out of the quilt. Looking at Song Qingshu's infatuated expression, she was ashamed and angry. "Have you played enough?" "Of course not." After unremitting efforts, Shuang Er was now half undressed. Her beautiful hair was disheveled, and her breathing became heavy. Song Qingshu looked at the result of the battle in front of him with satisfaction. "Tao Hong and the others are still outside," Shuang Er secretly exclaimed. While resisting Song Qingshu's perverted hands, she lowered her voice and warned. "It doesn't matter." Song Qingshu revealed a secretive smile, moved closer to Shuang Er's ear, and blew a breath of hot air. "And it's more exciting this way." Not knowing if her ears were sensitive or if she understood Song Qingshu's meaning, Shuang Er only felt her heartstrings tremble, unexpectedly having an inexplicable feeling. With a mischievous smile, Song Qingshu said, "Shuang, your acupoint sealing technique is quite accomplished. Let us see, in bed, whether your sleeve finger is more powerful or my dragon claw is more powerful." Among all the heroes in the world, if Song Qingshu were to fight while standing, he would probably be ranked in the top 10. If he were to fight while sitting, he would probably not be able to enter the top 10. However, if Song Qingshu claimed to be second in bed, no one would dare to claim to be first. Shuang Er was a weak woman. Her martial arts skill was far weaker than Song Qingshu's. Even if her real martial arts skill was almost the same as the opponent's, once they were on the bed, once her body was touched by his unique dragon claw, perhaps all her martial arts skill would be gone by 70 to 80%. I don't want to fight, you dirty. Schwanger lightly clenched her pearly white teeth and spat. How can a man and a woman's lovemaking be considered dirty? Song Qing-shu saw she had given up resisting. How could he not take advantage of the victory to pursue? Schwanger blushed, silently letting him untie her clothes. She had just felt a chill on her chest, and very quickly a pair of scorching hot lips pressed against it. Looking outside worriedly, Schwanger tightly guarded the last line of defense, resolutely said, I can only let you have it so easy. If I do that, Taohong, Liu Lu will definitely find out. Looking at her shy appearance of wanting to refuse, but also welcoming, Song Qing-shu only felt his whole body was extremely hot and dry. He did not have the heart to use force on Schwanger. He could not help coaxing and pestering her. Good Schwanger, look at me now. Have pity on me. I promise I will be gentle. Won't it be better if you don't make any noise later? From the corner of her eyes, Schwanger saw something that made her blush to her ears. She unconsciously muttered, when the time comes, I won't be able to hold myself back. Seeing her softening her tone, Song Qing-shu could not help but was overjoyed. Hastily he said, Good Schwanger, don't worry. Even if you accidentally make any noise and draw them in, with my agility, before they can see clearly, I've already sealed their sleeping acupoints. I guarantee they won't find out. Then you go and seal them now. Finished speaking, Schwanger shyly buried her head in the quilt. Seeing her hands were not so guarded anymore, Song Qing-shu knew in her heart that she had already agreed. How could he bear to leave the quilt and go out? He directly turned over and pressed down on her. With a soft moan, Schwanger's whole body trembled. Song Qing-shu let out a long sigh and said ruefully, Good Schwanger, why are you always so slippery? Naturally, Schwanger knew he was not praising her skin. Her pair of beautiful eyes could not help but roll her eyes at him. She bit her lips, resisting the feeling that was assaulting her body, resisting with great difficulty not to make any noise. Although Song Qing-shu's words were very bold, if he really lured the two girls outside into the room, it would be meaningless. Moreover, he would run the risk of not being able to get close to Schwanger in the future. Therefore, he deliberately made his movements gentle and slow to avoid making any creaking sounds on the bed. After a while, the originally tranquil room was filled with a trace of soft gasping and obviously suppressed moaning. Song Qing-shu kissed Schwanger's cheek. His voice became somewhat hoarse. Schwanger, do you know how seductive your nasal voice is? You scoundrel, you've caused my death. Only now did Schwanger notice that she had unknowingly made a sound. Seeing that there was no movement in the outer hall, she let out a sigh of relief. In the future, arrange for the two of them to live in another room. Song Qing-shu clearly understood that this was only the rule of the wealthy families in the capital. The young miss and madam lived in the inner bedroom. The servant girls and old women lived in the outer bedroom. If the master had any orders, he only needed to shout and the servants would be woken up. However, this rule really could not be used against Song Qing-shu in the future to steal beauties and jade. Their relationship with me has always been very good. If I rashly ask them to move to another room, I'm afraid it will arouse suspicion. Schwanger finally had a trace of reason left in her mind. She knew that if there were no two servant girls guarding outside, in the future, when Song Qing-shu did things, he might not have any scruples, and she would suffer a bit. You won't let them move? Being seen through by the other party, Song Qing-shu became somewhat angry out of humiliation. Fine, I'll let them see their master's appearance. Finished speaking, he lowered his waist, and the range of his movements clearly increased. Schwanger understood that Song Qing-shu wanted to force her to speak so that she would agree to his conditions. However, she understood that she was a married woman. Occasionally being like this with him was already taking an enormous risk. If they were to interact for a long time without restraint, their adultery would eventually be exposed, and that was something Schwanger didn't want to see. She tried to twist her body, but Schwanger dejectedly gave up struggling. Her vital parts were restrained, and her entire body couldn't exert any strength. With great difficulty, she finally exerted some strength, but in the end, the other party was still the one who benefited. He made it seem like she was coquettishly catering to him. The strange stimulation coming from her body scared Schwanger so much that she immediately stopped moving. However, right now, the man on top of her didn't have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. He only knew how to continuously gallop and demand. Schwanger didn't want to agree to Song Qingshu's conditions, but she also understood that she couldn't hold back any longer and was about to make a sound. She could only put her arm in her mouth. As soon as she felt that she couldn't take it anymore, she ruthlessly bit down. Song Qingshu very quickly noticed her abnormality. Looking at the circle of red teeth marks on her snow-white arm, he couldn't help but feel a burst of heartache. He hurriedly took out her hand. "If you want to bite me, then bite me." Finished speaking, he put his arm into Schwanger's sandalwood mouth. Schwanger was already somewhat angry with Song Qingshu. Seeing him deliver himself to her door, she ruthlessly bit down. Song Qingshu sucked in a breath of cold air. His movements couldn't help but slow down. "You're really heartless." "Not as heartless as you," Schwanger said hatefully, finding ways to torture others. "If you want to bite me, then bite me." Song Qingshu's stubbornness rose. Ignoring the strength of her bite, he also used more and more strength. Schwanger used all her strength to bite a few times. Seeing that he didn't show the slightest sign of loosening up, her heart was filled with anger and pity. She quietly asked, "Does it hurt?" "It doesn't hurt. Bite me all you want," Song Qingshu replied with a straight face. In the end, Schwanger still couldn't bear to bite him with all her strength. Only when she really couldn't bear it would she symbolically bite him. After biting, she was afraid that she would hurt him, so she promptly stuck out her little fragrant tongue and licked his wound. Noticing her considerate action, a strong feeling of friendship emerged in Song Qingshu's heart. He hugged her and said, "Good Schwanger, I won't force you." After saying that, his movements also became gentle. Schwanger had long been moved. Feeling Song Qingshu's pity for her, she unprecedentedly twisted her waist to cater to the man's movements. The drizzle and the cool breeze were still soul-stirring. In the end, the two of them tightly hugged each other. Noticing that Song Qingshu seemed to want to hug her to sleep, Schwanger forced her eyelids open and shook the man next to her. "Song Dage, you can't sleep here." Opening his eyes, Song Qingshu sighed. He didn't want Schwanger to be afraid, so he nodded and said, "I'll lie down for the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. We'll talk, then I'll leave." Schwanger changed to a more comfortable position and pressed her face against his chest. "Song Dage, last time you gave me 2 copies of the 42-chapter sutra. I've already taken out the pieces of sheepskin and pieced them together with a map from before." "Really?" Song Qingshu was overjoyed. "Schwanger is really clever and dexterous. Quickly, let me have a look. Just now you took off my clothes so frequently. Didn't you notice the treasure map?" Schwanger snorted delicately. She picked up the underwear scattered at the foot of the bed and handed it to Song Qingshu. "In my eyes, Schwanger's body is naturally much more attractive than any treasure map." Song Qingshu hugged Schwanger's forehead and kissed her. "You only know how to make me happy." Schwanger clearly knew that these were just words of love, but she still felt indescribably moved. Song Qingshu spread out the underwear and looked at it attentively. After a while, he returned the underwear to Schwanger's hands. Schwanger, Xiaobao has always been searching for the secret of the 42-chapter sutra. Tomorrow, we'll go to Brother Wei's grave together and cremate this complete treasure map for him. It can also be considered as fulfilling one of his wishes. Okay? Lying in another man's embrace and discussing Wei Xiaobao, Schwanger felt it was a little strange. However, she still nodded and said, "Song Dage is considerate. Xiaobao must be very happy." She paused and looked at Song Qingshu with some doubt. "You don't want this treasure map anymore?" Nodding his head, Song Qingshu smiled. "It's all recorded here. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.